Greetings, observer. You are tuned to continuous environmental telemetry. Across silent fields and broken rings, phenomena unfold, recorded in real time. There are no emergencies. There is no need for course correction. This is a passive journey through unfolding conditions at the edges of mapped space. Prepare for quiet monitoring. Chapter 1. Galactic Overview. Quiet storms across the Orion Arm. Tonight, the galactic front is unusually tranquil. Along the central driftway, stretching from the inner curve of the Scutum cloud to the long fingers of the Perseus fork, radiation tides remain low and steady. The dark matter scaffolds are holding firm. Neutrino seepage is down by 0.3% compared to last cycle. Barely noticeable, but comforting nonetheless. Across the 10,000 settlements of the outer fringe, photonic interference has fallen to its lowest levels in 7 cycles. Data sails and signal kites can unfurl safely once again, and long-distance transmissions may resume without need for delay encoding. Expect clear comms from Betel's edge all the way to the Rosette Nebula broadcasting cradle. In the mid-spiral corridor, often called the Lantern Band, where so many of our listening outposts hover quietly above gas giants and forgotten moons, we are observing a mild plasma drift. It's a gentle curl of ionized wind that softly illuminates the hulls of retired starliners and the still-turning blades of the helioturbine farms. Their silvery frames shimmer in the orange mist like schools of metallic fish. No reroutes are currently recommended for ships following the Aleph trade current. However, pilots are encouraged to allow an extra 7 microseconds of correction drift due to faint gravitational tugging near the Wolf Spiral cluster. It's subtle, almost a whisper, but sensitive vessels may feel it like a feather brushing past the hull. The Thornback Comet swarm, currently migrating through the lower Orion corridor, continues its ballet of frozen brilliance. Though no danger is posed to inhabited systems, the luminosity levels have caused momentary sensor flares for older exosuits. Standard protocol recommends a visor bloom shield toggle when passing through illuminated fields, especially near Comet Shard Z19, which is presently shedding a luminous tail nearly 5 million kilometers long. Further in, toward the Carina sheath, local storms of solar memory particles continue to disperse. Once dangerous, particularly for thoughtcraft and idea-driven ships, these clouds have thinned considerably. The auroral data now dances in slow spirals along the magnetoline. Some observers have likened it to calligraphy made of light, letters that no one alive can read, but everyone enjoys watching. Let's shift to the Whispering Belt, a region once thought unremarkable. There, in the void between known routes, faint acoustic pulses have resumed their rhythmic song. Not language per se, and not quite music. Just a low, echoing cadence that rises every 88,000 seconds and falls again like a heartbeat of the stars. You are advised not to triangulate. Let it remain a mystery. It's part of the charm. In more populated regions, particularly the dusk arc systems, atmospheric pressures remain within safe thresholds for both organic and silicon-based life forms. Several floating monasteries have reported unusually beautiful flux sky patterns, long bands of cerulean and burnt gold, stretching from horizon to horizon. No artificial origin has been found, though one monk described it as the slow exhalation of a patient god. While this is not a technical term, we concur. It's rather poetic. From the helix mist fields to the glittering verge, microgravity currents remain favorable for botanical stations. Those growing spiral root crops or atmosphere-binding lichen can expect a gentle increase in photosynthetic saturation due to the bloom of light-rich dust recently cast off by the dying star Aleph Tri. It's not often that decay leads to such flourishing, but nature, even among the stars, has its own sense of rhythm. Asteroid migration remains minimal. The Yaldrin shoals have gone quiet, not in a concerning way, but more like a deep breath. Observers tracking the shoal's usual erratic dances have noted a shift in their patterns. Where they once flailed like shattered glass, they now drift like fallen leaves in calm water. Their silence is not absence, it is peace. The mirror moons of the ecliptic passage are also in alignment this week, reflecting light from 3 different suns. This phenomenon, known locally as the trifold gleam, causes faint refractive halos around passing vessels. If your ship displays ghost readings or momentary self-reflections, do not be alarmed. It is simply the light remembering itself in every direction. Now we turn to solar flare conditions. The following systems are currently under mild radiative bloom. Kappa-therm ring, aurora-scale sunspot eruptions predicted to peak within the next 12 hours. Ambient light may turn violet in areas of exposed skyglass. Delta Prime 8, experiencing mild coronal whispers, mostly aesthetic, with no hardware disruptions reported. Multi-system, hosting a starquake event. Vessels within 50 light seconds are asked to maintain solar shielding and avoid onboard introspection modules until tremors pass. And now, a word for the stargazers. Tonight's alignment of the dust crown and the broken chain means visibility of the veiled quasar will be at its clearest. Though it emits no visible light, the gravitational mirage it creates will distort background constellations in ways that feel intentional, as though someone has painted new stars with trembling hands. Find a window, find some silence, and simply observe. To those traveling through the amniotic wake, the soft flow corridor once used by the first sleep ships, reports indicate 0 turbulence. The corridor remains plush and buoyant. If you're aboard a vessel designed to hum with the frequency of the old lullaby engines, you may experience spontaneous dreams unrelated to memory. As always, remember to check the cycle sync of your onboard chronometers. While galactic drift is currently minimal, the residual effects of the murmur pulse, a still unexplained wavefront that passed through this region some 800 years ago, continue to cause occasional time slips in outpost record keeping. This is purely aesthetic. Do not be alarmed if your logs seem to shimmer. And finally, to our listeners stationed on the farthest orbitals, adrift and quiet between systems, the starlight that reaches you tonight is as safe as a whisper, as gentle as a lullaby folded in velvet. You are not forgotten. Your coordinates are remembered by the wind. Let's return briefly to the Core-like constellation, that luminous braid near the galactic equator. For the last 8 cycles, its photon blooms have followed a slow breathing pattern, pulsing outward, then dimming, as if syncing with the invisible rhythms of a much older song. Though no known process drives this behavior, many long-range ships have adjusted their lighting to match it. Some crews report improved sleep and dreams that feel less like memory and more like gentle instruction. The Cephean dust trails, once opaque with interstellar sediment, have recently begun to clear. Ionized winds from nearby suns have swept paths clean, revealing old listening posts long thought abandoned. Faint signals, whispers of ancient languages and navigational hymns, are now being received, decrypted, and archived. These aren't warnings. They're more like lullabies from distant ancestors, encoded in the noise of forgotten time. Between the Erosin fields and the glass halo nebula, travelers may spot unusual spires of light. These are not structures, but atmospheric phenomena. Vertical columns of condensed photonic vapor that rise for hundreds of kilometers, refracting the starlight like rain caught in crystal pipes. There is no danger associated with them, but if you pass nearby, you may hear your own voice echo softly, repeating things you never said. In the cold expanse near the Ancharis fringe, we are tracking the slow bloom of a reflection storm. Unlike typical weather, this is not composed of matter or energy, but of refracted visual memory, fragments of distant landscapes and dreamlike visions drifting across space like shadows on old glass. Pilots are encouraged not to follow these illusions, no matter how familiar they seem. The cartographer's wake, a thin silken field of dark energy filaments, remains undisturbed. This is a safe region, ideal for those seeking uninterrupted drift. Many choose to anchor here for sleep, navigation recalibration, or quiet contemplation. The field generates a low harmonic tone just beneath hearing. Some say it vibrates with the sum of every path not taken. Closer to home, the Pearl Line arc stations report moderate flux in the luminous algae used for bioluminescent power conversion. While no disruptions are expected, local atmospheres may glow with shades of turquoise and deep lavender. The phenomenon is entirely safe, and often quite beautiful when viewed through prism glass observation domes. Among the stations of the slow ring, the vast circle of habitats that orbit in wide, deliberate arcs, mechanical wind has returned. This artificial breeze, generated by the station's own motion through fine particulate clouds, creates a soft vibration in the hull. Passengers may mistake this for a heartbeat or distant breathing. There's no need for concern. It's merely the sky brushing its fingers along the walls. Turning attention to deep field regions, the anima clouds have entered their phosphorescent phase. These clouds of gas and trace consciousness, remnants of ancient sentient stars, shimmer with erratic pulses of violet and green. No threat has ever been associated with them, though several research vessels report a sense of being watched kindly when passing through. For those on extended journeys, the nomad drifts remain open. These shifting corridors of safe space are maintained by gravitational harmony alone. No beacons, no stabilizers, just the memory of thousands of ships gently guiding the way. These paths shimmer faintly in IR like brushstrokes against an infinite canvas. Follow them if you like. They always lead somewhere quiet. Let us not forget the swallowing fields, a region of dark velvet nothingness near the Blackwell Expanse. While imposing in name, the fields have been unusually quiet. No major collapses, no matter leaks, and no reports of lost time or duplicated memories in over 30 cycles. A good sign for long haulers and memory archivists. Elsewhere, the rose petal rings, those scattered, overlapping asteroid belts surrounding the twin stars of Valtir, have entered another alignment cycle. From afar, they resemble a blossoming flower in slow motion. Their pinkish hue is caused by trace elements of iron oxide and ancient ice, both harmless and highly photogenic. Finally, in the deep northern spiral above the galactic horizon, a rare bloom of dark bloomers has been spotted. These microscopic life forms, native to vacuum environments, emit pulses of heat and low red light as they replicate. They drift in clumps the size of planets, soft and slow. Entire species of stargulls and driftfish follow them through the void, feeding on their warmth like ancient ocean plankton. Chapter 2. Solar Surge Warnings in the Vega Sector. A soft red pulse sweeps across the monitor. The alert is gentle, not urgent. A whisper from the stars, not a cry. We begin our report tonight with the Vega Sector, a region of glittering suns, ancient orbital rings, and long-abandoned observation decks floating quietly above still warm planets. Once home to some of the first solar listening stations, Vega now hosts only echoes of those days. But tonight, it sings again. Solar activity has increased around Vega Prime, with magnetospheric turbulence causing low-frequency disruptions across the surrounding exospheres. These disruptions are not destructive, but they shimmer and they hum. The suns here don't roar with radiation, they murmur. Current telemetry suggests a cluster of solar bloom events unfurling slowly across the equator of Vega Prime. These blooms are not explosive, instead they unfold like petals from a glowing chrysanthemum. The flare petals drift into space, curling with electric grace. They touch the upper layers of orbiting stations like fingers brushing dew. Radiation levels have risen modestly, but predictably. Most vessels equipped with standard shielding, even aging freighters, will remain unaffected. However, there have been isolated reports of interference in memory playback loops, particularly those stored in crystal core archives. If your vessel operates with mnemonic-based processors, a full-cycle recalibration is advised. The solar wind from Vega Prime carries with it a mineralized ash, the residue of star stuff mid-transformation. This ash does not burn nor blind. Instead, it coats surfaces in a thin shimmer that reflects starlight at odd angles. Observers note that faces reflected in these surfaces seem subtly altered, as though smiling just before the real face catches up. Further into the sector, the twin dwarf suns of Vega Delta and Vega X have begun emitting a synchronized pulsar pattern. This rhythmic emission is not dangerous, but it creates a soft pressure wave across the local space lanes, something like a pulse you can't hear, but might feel if you're still enough. Pilots passing through this region have reported unusual dreams, many involving spirals, corridors of light, or singing voices just beyond understanding. It is unclear whether these are side effects of the pulsar wave or simply the product of silence and motion. The orbital ring known as Cradle 9, a lattice of station debris and half-functioning observation hubs, remains in stable drift above Vega 2. From here, automated sensors have recorded some of the most elegant auroras seen in this quadrant in over 60 cycles. The auroras form not in the upper atmosphere, but in the vacuum just beyond it, suspended in magnetic nets cast by the twin suns. They flicker in soft greens and golds, and then vanish like sighs released from the planet's breathless skin. Inhabitants of nearby orbital refuges are advised to temporarily deactivate visual anomaly filters. Though normally used to reduce flare fatigue, these filters can interfere with the rare light phenomena currently present. It is recommended instead to observe directly, through viewports, or within filtered light domes, if available. The show is gentle and worth seeing. Radiation levels within the dust corridor trailing Vega X remain within normal seasonal ranges. However, a light surge of ionic glitter has been detected. These particles are non-toxic and non-abrasive, but may cling to outer hulls and sensor dishes. The result is a delicate shimmer, visible especially at oblique angles. Some vessels appear as if dressed in frost, even while bathed in the warmth of the central suns. Those aboard older generation ships may notice slight delays in artificial gravity recalibration during vector changes near the Vega Tangle, a region of crisscrossing gravitational streams created by the overlapping pull of 3 substellar cores. These delays are harmless, but can produce a feeling of soft footsteps echoing inside the ship's structure. Many describe it like walking through memories, a brief deceleration in the present. The Vega sector's hollow moons remain in stable resonance. These are natural satellites with core cavities deep enough to ring like bells when struck by magnetic drift. Though rare, listeners tuned to deep-wave channels may hear their vibrations. Tonight, the third moon of Vega X is expected to chime softly at 3:14 local time, audible across 8 subchannels. The sound is not musical in the traditional sense. It is more like breath across ancient stone, the voice of a planet remembering its shape. Local flora on Vega 2 has responded curiously to the increased solar output. Several ground-based sensors report accelerated bioluminescence pulses in the tall spiral grass colonies. Normally blue-white in their glow, these plants now emit amber and violet hues, washing the plains in living color. It is unclear whether this change is reactive or expressive, but either way, it is beautiful. Meanwhile, the floating gardens aboard Station Laniakea have opened their external petal domes. These structures are designed to absorb solar radiation during bloom phase, and today they catch the light like slow-spinning lanterns. The station's central axis has been adjusted to maximize petal exposure, creating a rotating aurora that cascades light down each section. This creates a sanctuary-like effect in the ship's inner walkways, as though the corridors themselves have become part of the star's reflection. Wanderers traveling via the old relay route should note the presence of phantom interference shadows, electromagnetic echoes from solar bloom events cascading backward through local spacetime. These appear only in high-sensitivity readings and sometimes mimic familiar signal profiles, including known vessels and recorded transmissions. Standard protocol advises treating them as weather, to acknowledge and move through, not chase. The sector's artificial suns, 6 in total, remain in regulated orbit. Each designed for specific agricultural and thermal support, they have adjusted their luminal outputs by 0.7% to compensate for Vega Prime's shift. This calibration maintains biosphere stability on the multi-tiered cradle stations and ensures continuity in plant rhythm cycles. The light remains warm and soft and constant. Tonight, a rare and quiet event is forecast: the convergence of all 3 visible solar halos over the veil of clouds on Vega 4. This event, dubbed the Trine Gaze, occurs only once every 111 years. For precisely 4 minutes and 16 seconds, light from Vega Prime, Vega Delta, and Vega X will align through thin atmospheric sheaths, forming a trio of faint, overlapping circles in the sky. From the planet's surface, it will appear as though 3 suns are watching from above, not burning, just present, just watching. For those traveling slowly, resting in quiet orbit, or listening from frozen observation buoys, you are safe. Your shielding is strong. Your systems are steady. The stars are merely speaking more clearly than usual. That concludes this segment of the Vega Sector Weather Advisory. Elsewhere in the Vega Sector, the lattice rings, once used to transfer energy between orbital habitats, have begun to glow faintly again. Though long dormant, the ancient filaments appear to be absorbing ambient stellar flux. This activity is likely residual, with no cause for concern. But the effect is stunning. Great spiderwebs of bronze and silver flickering in and out of phase with the background stars. A few listening posts have reported faint melodic resonance, almost like plucked strings on a cosmic harp. The cloud-steppe peaks, a chain of towering vapor mountains rising from the mesosphere of Vega 2, have reached their seasonal evaporation bloom. Great towers of steam laced with trace helium and ionized mist ascend in slow spirals, climbing kilometers high before dispersing into luminous cirrus arcs. From orbit, the view resembles silk scarves rising endlessly from an invisible hand. The ghost satellites, those long-defunct relics drifting in forgotten Lagrange points, are waking briefly. Solar contact has triggered motion in some, slight rotation, sensor eye blinking once, then darkening. One satellite, ID 4 Chi-7, has begun transmitting a looping signal in Old Common. A repeated phrase, simple and soft, visibility restored. The origin of the phrase remains unknown. Further inward, the twin asteroid hives near Vega X, known collectively as the Murmuration, are releasing their pollen clouds, microscopic particles designed to terraform inhospitable surfaces. The clouds form slow spirals as they move, diffusing color into the black. No planets are in range to benefit. The particles simply drift, fulfilling a purpose long since orphaned. And finally, to those who remain in the quiet places, in solitary drift between stars, on listening decks, or in the glass domes of rotating gardens, know this: the sun is watching you kindly tonight. The sector glows with harmless fire. The light has voice, but no judgment. Let it pass through you like warmth through window glass. The Vega sector speaks in radiance, not in roar. Listen, and you will feel it. Chapter 3. Gravity shears detected near the Oort fracture. In the coldest cradle of the solar boundary, where ancient debris drifts like forgotten prayers, a subtle shift has begun. The Oort fracture, a vast, uneven veil beyond the planetary watch, is stirring. Early this cycle, probes stationed along the outer heliopause recorded a faint undulation in the local space-time fabric. Not a tear, not a rupture, but a shiver. Gravity, normally docile in these regions, appears to be folding inwards on itself in gently spiraling shears. The effect is not yet visible to the eye, but instruments report a rhythmic distortion, as though space is breathing through interlaced fingers. This phenomenon, termed a shear bloom, has been observed only 4 times in the recorded age of stellar observation. Each instance was preceded by a period of exceptional silence, and indeed, radio feedback across the outer fields has dropped to almost zero. Static has become velvet. Background hums have gone quiet. Even the stars seem to blink slower here. Long-range vessels are advised to alter course by no more than 1 degree. That is enough to skirt the shearing vectors. These folds in gravity don't pull, they brush, and their touch may cause delays in onboard timekeeping. Temporal drift rates remain within tolerance, though a slight shift of perception may occur. Some crew may experience the feeling of a long sigh that never quite ends. Among the fragment fields of the outer belt, several monitoring stations, many unmanned and thought long dormant, have begun to relay fragmented observations. These signals arrive as slow bursts of compressed image data, curling dust spirals illuminated by unknown sources, lens distortions that create fractal shadows, and glimpses of debris rings undulating like silk on unseen tides. The anomaly appears to concentrate near a loosely orbiting mass identified only as Oort Object 9 Lambda. Once believed to be inert, 9 Lambda now pulses faintly in the infrared spectrum, surrounded by concentric waves of low-pressure gravitational oscillation. These waves don't crash or roll, they resonate. If light could hum, this would be its tone. Closer inspection by drone relay reveals that microasteroids in the vicinity are rotating at slightly inconsistent velocities, as though dancing to an unheard rhythm. Their shadows flicker across sensor arrays like old film reels, not chaotic, but irregularly poetic. The fracture seems to be singing, not in pitch, but in motion. Guidance algorithms have been updated for long-haul vessels passing through the high driftway. Realignment of navigation beacons now includes harmonic variance mapping, a safety measure ensuring stability for ships susceptible to gravimetric modulation. Pilots may notice a light buzzing in the instrument panels. This is not interference, but rather feedback from the surrounding shear fields, a gentle alarm with no danger. At the edges of the anomaly, something curious occurs. Starlight curves. Not dramatically, but subtly. What should be straight appears soft. Lenses, both organic and synthetic, report a sense of depth shifting, not outward but inward. The void, it seems, is folding into itself in layers thinner than thought. And yet the effect on matter is minimal. Ice flows remain slow and ponderous. Mineral clouds drift in patient spirals. There is no chaos, no destruction, only the sensation of being rearranged without being moved. Scientists aboard the cartography vessel Minuet of Dust describe the region as reality caught mid-curtsy. One research satellite, Aeon Field 2, has captured a full rotational map of the affected zone. The data reveals undulating vectors that resemble calligraphy written in gravitational ink. These spirals repeat every 113 seconds, forming wave loops that could fit a spiral galaxy 3 times over. This is, in every measurable way, a quiet storm. Astronomers are particularly interested in the sudden appearance of low-heat filaments that thread between fractured debris clusters. These filaments appear as hairline cracks in local space, visible only when backlit by high-frequency starlight. No material composition has been confirmed, but they pulse with soft magnetism. Not enough to pull, but enough to persuade. Vessels stationed near the refractive edge have noted memory echoes in voice logs, repeated words spoken only once, or audio clips embedded with soft static that spell nothing, yet feel full. These are not deemed hazardous, though sleep irregularities among crew have been noted. Best practices suggest limiting direct visual exposure to shear fields longer than 2 cycles per observation window. The tide of gravity continues to swirl, not inward toward collapse, but outward, like fog dissipating. This suggests the anomaly is entering a dissipation phase. However, echoes may linger. Objects exposed to the shear for extended periods may resonate subtly for years, humming softly during navigation pulses or warming slightly when scanned. For now, no evacuations are recommended. The anomaly is still classified as aesthetic. The fracture remains as beautiful as it is indifferent. A horizon where space forgets its rigidity and breathes, if only for a moment. Further into the zone, deep scan buoys have begun recording soft pulses in gravitational torque. These are not shocks, but oscillations, small like ripples beneath glass. Onboard diagnostics describe them with non-standard telemetry. Phrases like harmonic bloom and depth pulse appear in logs, as if the machines are borrowing language from poetry. The crew of the relay craft Stillwater Drift reports that its inertial dampeners briefly synchronized with one such pulse. No impact was felt, but internal chronometers recorded a half-second dilation, a pause in time imperceptible to crew but recorded in every system. For that instant, the stars outside seemed to lean closer, as if observing with quiet intent. Across the dust corridors of the fracture's rim, light particles are scattering unusually. This has created a faint, ghost-like corona along the orbital pathways of 3 small moons. To human eyes, it resembles the afterglow of distant fireworks, a trailing arc that vanishes the moment you try to focus. But through enhanced optics, the phenomenon becomes a woven mesh of pale blue threads, flickering softly in the shape of spirals. The old beacon rings once used for deep space rescue now hum again. Though most no longer function, proximity to the gravitational bloom has triggered faint reactivation in a handful of buried cores. One such core, designated R33 Orpheline, has resumed its low-frequency ping. The signal, repeating once every 57 seconds, contains no message, only a tone. It is not a call, it is a reminder. Not all observations are external. Crew aboard the long-range drifter Golden Ark report shifts in sensation when observing the fracture. Some describe the feeling of a soft push when approaching sensor windows. Others hear tones not present in the cabin, harmonic chords too subtle to record. There is no evidence of system failure, only the sense that something vast is humming softly and that you are standing just near enough to feel it through your boots. Deep archive pods sent into the inner folds return distorted, not damaged, but strangely altered. Internal recordings appear slowed, with the ambient audio replaced by long, stretching notes, like the sound of wind over ice. Visual data captures clear images, but all footage has a slight inward curvature, as though seen through the edge of a lens crafted from memory. Experts suggest that this may be a form of gravitational lensing so refined it borders on artistry. The consensus remains: the Oort fracture is not threatening. It is not dangerous. It is changing, gently, deliberately, and without malice. It is a place where gravity turns to thought and space becomes suggestion. This concludes the weather advisory for the Oort boundary region. Crews in transit may continue at standard drift. Those choosing to pause, observe, and reflect, may you find stillness in the motion. A final note for explorers navigating the peripheral fields. Sensor anomalies near Fracture Echo Point 7 have begun displaying interference patterns shaped like spirals within spirals. These patterns are not fixed. They evolve slowly over time, mimicking the structure of kelp swaying in deep ocean currents. Observers are encouraged to document, not decode. Let the patterns drift through your awareness like the weather they are, elegant, untamed, and fleeting. For now, the Oort fracture remains a place of subtle music, invisible tides, and memory like wind, a landscape made not of rock or ice, but of space and soft motion. Chapter 4. Magnetic Reversals in the Artificial Nebulae. In the twilight corridors of the Perseid Shelf, where engineered gas clouds drift like incense in cathedral silence, something quiet but monumental is unfolding. The artificial nebulae, vast clouds cultivated by ancient, vanished architects, are reversing their magnetic fields. These nebulae are not natural, though they behave as if they were. Formed through deliberate detonation of metallic particulates and fusion steam, they were designed to serve both aesthetic and functional purposes, shielding deep space sanctuaries, sustaining rare biospheres, and diffusing the radiation of nearby dying stars. They pulse with soft color, their hues determined by trace elements carefully introduced over millennia. Until recently, the magnetic currents that gave these clouds shape were stable, but now, across at least 5 confirmed nebulae, sensors detect a gradual reorientation. North becomes south, push becomes pull, and invisible lines of force redraw their pathways in elegant spirals. It's not chaotic, more like the turning of a great page. The most active of these is Nebula K7, often referred to as the lungs due to its slow, breathing pulses of violet and gold. Observers aboard the old sanctuary station Vesper Halo report that the clouds now contract slightly before each pulse, creating a rhythm like inhalation and exhalation. It is as though the nebula has become aware of itself and is choosing to breathe deeper. Elsewhere within the network of designed nebulae, changes ripple outward like silk on slow water. Nebula S Theta, long dormant, has begun emitting pulses of polarized light that alternate in color with each magnetic cycle. These shifts are imperceptible to the eye in real time, but appear clearly when viewed in time-lapse. A spectral dance unfolding over hours, painting the void in shifting gradients of emerald and blue. Inside these clouds, magnetic inversions create strange geometries. Ion trails begin to curve backward, forming mirrored arcs. Dust filaments align in symmetrical vortices, like mandalas slowly forming from starlit sand. These patterns are not merely beautiful. They are stabilizing, as though the nebulae know how to balance themselves as they turn. The sanctuary station Chorus Mend, partially embedded within the heart of Nebula Y9, has reported fluctuations in artificial gravity fields. These are gentle and rhythmic, often felt as a soft rise or fall, as though the floor itself were breathing with the cloud. Technicians call it cloud drift, and report that sleep has become deeper, dreams more vivid. Navigation systems remain functional. The magnetic reversal affects field orientation, but does not interfere with onboard systems tuned to phase pulse coordinates. In fact, many autonomous drones report smoother course correction within the reversing clouds, as if their paths are being softly guided, not obstructed. Radiation levels have not increased. On the contrary, several regions have shown an unexpected decline in ambient photonic scatter, allowing clearer signals to pass through the dust-laden corridors of interstellar space. Communications with deep-field telescopes have improved by 17%, and observational clarity is up 22% across sectors adjacent to the clouds. Aboard silent vessel Ein, stationed at the edge of Nebula Epsilon Twin, crew members have observed light behaving like water. Rays bend, pool, and shimmer against the viewing glass, not distorted by heat or lens, but seemingly drawn to the curvature of magnetic tides. One observer described it as light learning how to float. Further research into these reversals is underway. Theories range from ancient fail-safes embedded by the builders to responses triggered by long-forgotten cosmic conditions. No consensus has emerged. What is known is that these magnetic inversions are neither violent nor erratic. They are patient, deliberate, a transformation unfolding like the slow tilt of a celestial compass. Drift barges that pass through the clouds report no interference in mechanical operations, though several have described a sensation of quietness that seems to settle over both ship and crew. One pilot noted that the usual whir of onboard systems became muffled, like being wrapped in gauze. Others have heard faint tones, not sounds made by instruments, but something deeper, as if the clouds themselves were humming. Atmospheric biomes anchored within the densest filaments continue to thrive. Photosensitive algae have begun glowing in sync with the reversals, pulsing in rhythmic waves that resemble heartbeat patterns. This synchronization has never been recorded before and is currently under gentle study. So far, the algae show no signs of distress. Only curiosity, if such a word can be borrowed. The largest of these artificial constructs, Nebula Lyra 0, spans over 1.2 light-years and is currently undergoing a complete field inversion. From the outside, it resembles a slow-motion cyclone made of bronze and sapphire. From the inside, travelers report that time itself seems to soften, not bend or break, but become smooth. Actions feel slower, thoughts unhurried. One crew member aboard the Halo of Salt described it best. It's not that time stops, it just stops asking questions. And yet, for all the wonder, there are whispers of echo. The reversal fields at their midpoint produce shadows and sensor arrays, silhouettes of shapes that have no mass and cast no obstruction. These shadows move slowly, following the magnetic curl. They're not threatening, not tracked, but they are observed. Engineers have coined the term field ghosts, not out of fear, but because the clouds seem to remember something as they turn. Let us drift with them a while longer. In the deeper folds of Nebula M, a set of beacon buoys have begun transmitting harmonics in perfect sequence with one another. These buoys were never programmed to sync. Their drift paths are separate, their algorithms unlinked, and yet each one now pulses in identical rhythm, soft, drawn-out tones that echo across the gas folds like a language without syntax. Some researchers believe this may be an emergent phenomenon, a side effect of the magnetic harmonization across vast distances. Meanwhile, Station Solace, an abandoned monastery vessel anchored in the wisps of Nebula Theta Del, has reactivated its internal light cycles. No one remains aboard, and no signals were sent. Yet its windows glow faintly, and its outer panels glisten as if wiped clean by invisible hands. It is presumed that the reversal has awakened dormant solar panels, though some suggest the ship simply wished to shine again, drawn out of slumber by the turning tide. In one curious case, a reflective buoy stationed at the convergence point of two clouds has begun spinning gently in place. Its movement is not mechanical. Internal mechanisms are offline. The spin matches the reversal interval exactly. Light catches on its polished side every few minutes, flashing like a distant lighthouse across the starless corridor. It turns without effort, slowly, purposefully. Another noteworthy observation involves sound, or rather, the absence of it. Crews passing near Nebula Crown Echo report that their internal audio systems temporarily dull, as if the clouds are absorbing not just light, but vibration itself. Even voices feel thinner in this zone. Spoken words seem to fade just a fraction too soon, like snow melting before it touches the ground. A small group of botanists aboard the Seed Path Array has found that certain engineered plants, grown to respond to ambient magnetism, have begun to bloom early, not in response to light, but in response to field curvature. One species, known informally as sky vine, has twined upward into corkscrews aligned perfectly with the surrounding reversals. No light source guided it. Only magnetism. Only motion. This is the quiet power of the artificial nebulae, built not for conquest, but for contemplation. They turn like great invisible gears, adjusting the tempo of space around them, not with noise, not with fire, but with memory, design, and breath. And so they reverse, slowly, elegantly. Not a storm, not a signal, but a gesture, one understood only in silence. This concludes the current advisory for the magnetic field shifts across the artificial nebula network. All travel paths remain stable. No action is required, only awareness. Let them turn and be still. As the cycle turns, navigators are reminded to record observations, not just anomalies. The beauty of these reversals lies not in their rarity, but in their grace, a reminder that even engineered wonders can evolve. Let the clouds turn. Let the maps be redrawn in magnetism and light. There is no danger here, only motion. Chapter 5. Acid snowfall around the gas giant archive. At the edge of the Mariline drift, where starlight bends blue and silence thickens like velvet, there spins a gas giant unlike any other. Massive, banded and humming with ancient codes, it is known simply as the Archive. Orbiting this titan are hundreds of satellites, stations, and memory vaults. Once, these housed the full recorded thought of an empire. Now they drift in half-function, kept alive by routine maintenance drones and solar-fed cores. Their purpose is unclear to most, but the name has endured. This week, the clouds below have begun to fall. Not in the usual torrential spiral storms for which gas giants are famous, but in crystalline particles, flakes of acid ice forming in the upper atmosphere and drifting upward before settling in long arcs. The snow does not burn, it does not hiss, but it etches. Slowly, persistently, it draws faint scars into the archival satellites as it lands. The snowfall is seasonal. It arrives once every 93 years, triggered by deep orbital resonance between the planet's core and its outer magnetic shell. Each flake is microscopic, hexagonal in structure, and delicately transparent. When viewed through polarized lenses, they shimmer like cut diamonds suspended in zero gravity. Observers aboard the rotating observatory Tranquil Gaze describe the snowfall as impossibly quiet, a motion so slow it feels imagined. Drones operating within the outer rings report no functional impairment, but some have recorded unusual residue buildup across their upper hulls. This residue, composed of trace acids, crystallized sulfur, and complex carbon matrices, is not corrosive at current concentrations. Rather, it leaves behind faint lattices resembling frostwork etched onto starship glass. Aboard the memory vault Seraphim Node 6, internal climate stabilizers have begun to adjust autonomously in rhythm with the snowfall. No command protocols initiated the sequence. The vault simply chose to lower its internal temperature by 2 degrees, just enough to match the falling rhythm beyond its hull. Engineers monitoring the system describe this as coincidence, but the vault's ambient logbook contains an entry time-stamped just before the adjustment. We remember the snow. Such poetic fragments are not uncommon within the archive. The facilities are ancient, their memory cores too vast and tangled to fully decrypt. Some entries read like diary fragments from vanished minds. Others are purely environmental. Rainfall logs, ion density charts, broken song lyrics embedded in telemetry. Within the polar hemisphere, cloud formations have begun to spiral with extraordinary precision. From orbit, they appear like great clockwork gears turning beneath the snow. These spirals are not stable storms, but convective systems guided by magneto-aerodynamic resonance. They hum, softly, almost musically, with the charge of the planet's inner layers. Pilots passing above the equatorial band are advised to reduce velocity. Visibility is reduced not by clouds, but by the snow's diffraction properties. When viewed at angle, the flakes bend light inward, creating a tunnel-like illusion that can disorient. Veteran navigators recommend slow drift through the visual corridors, relying more on rhythm than sight. Interestingly, the snowfall seems to avoid certain satellites. These untouched bodies, mostly inactive or sealed long ago, remain perfectly clean, as if the particles refuse to touch them. No electromagnetic shielding explains the behavior. It's as though the snow respects silence. Some crews have begun collecting the flakes, not for analysis, but for art. Inside the Murmur Bay Research Dome, technologists have begun assembling them into suspended light sculptures. Each flake, preserved in magnetic lattice, refracts ambient glow into gentle rainbows. The installation is silent. Visitors pass through it slowly, like moving through a moment that forgot to end. The archive itself emits no alarm, no protest. The systems continue. Steady hums, occasional flickers, always warm. A gentle glow pulses across its central ring every 6 hours. Some say the pulses respond to the snowfall. Others say the planet is dreaming. Most satellites now record ambient sound, not mechanical noise, but the whisper of snowfall against metal. Played back, it resembles soft static, interwoven with tones, a melody made of motion, a sound like memory sighing. Radiation levels remain consistent, no danger is present. The acid crystals are fragile. They dissolve within hours, leaving only trace signatures on spectral scans. But during their brief existence, they glitter. Vast arcs of diamond gray fall like wishes, silent and precise, through the thin outer skin of the archive's sky, and still the snow falls. Low-orbit listening vessels have reported a curious phenomenon. Temporal drift patterns appear slightly more coherent during snowfall. This has led to a temporary boost in the synchronization of deep-wave transmissions from adjacent sectors. Scientists speculate that the snow may be affecting subquantum resonance fields, a fringe theory, but the data holds. At least for now. In the shadowed hemispheres, icebound memory cores embedded in orbital shells have begun to blink again. These are not systems designed to communicate. They merely store. Inert, cold, reliable. But as the snow gathers atop their thin shielding, the mass begins to resonate faintly. A technician monitoring one such core described the effect as a tone I couldn't hear but felt in my chest. The long drifting monastery vessel Ember Lantern have taken to ritual observance of the snow. Each time it falls, they gather silently in the dome chamber, watching the particles drift by. Candles are not lit, words are not spoken. Only breath fogs the glass. They say the snow is a reminder that even silence has structure. Drift ships anchored in stationary orbit have begun to record minor fluctuations in mass distribution. These are not equipment errors. The snow accumulates just enough to shift micro-balancing systems by fractions. Autocorrection kicks in automatically, then resets. Each shift is a heartbeat, subtle, rhythmic, and real. Data harvested from drone swarms confirms that the acid snow is composed of more than chemical frost. Inside some flakes lie trace elements of encoded structure, crystalline matrices that respond to specific frequencies. When exposed to directed tone pulses, a few flakes have shown minor reshaping, as if adjusting to the music. One research vessel, the Archivist's Breath, is now testing musical harmonic pulses during collection sweeps. Early findings suggest certain choral frequencies cause flakes to spin or vibrate faintly in pattern. There is no message, no language, only behavior. It has been noted that the snowfall always begins with a single flake, just one, seen by no one, marked only by instrument logs. Then another, then a cascade. The archive watches it unfold, always calm, always still. A planet that once listened now becomes the canvas for a story written in frost. To those far out in the drift, watching the horizon fold under starlight, the snow is real. Your hull is kissed by it. Your sensors feel it. Even your thoughts, slowed by distance and time, might sense its descent. This concludes the current weather report from the archive orbit. All systems remain nominal. Guidance is stable. Course corrections are unnecessary. The snow is expected to continue for 11 more cycles. Drift gently and let it fall. And in the quiet that follows each snowfall cycle, there is a pause. Not in the systems, but in the space between. As if even the archive waits, as if the stars above lean closer, listening for the next flake to fall. There is no rush, only the rhythm of frozen time brushing gently across ancient memory. Long-range atmospheric sensors have now confirmed that the snowfall is not global but migratory. It sweeps slowly across latitudes like a tide, marking time in silence. The archive does not shift to meet it. The snow finds its place unbidden. Even now, as the particles drift across the final vault clusters, each flake falls with perfect timing, as if measured by breath, rather than physics. Some say the snow carries with it not just particles but remembrance, the quiet echo of an age when the archive sang. If that's true, then tonight, every flake is a note, and together they compose a lullaby meant for no one, or perhaps meant for you. So let it fall, gentle, soundless, infinite. The archive watches, and still the snow falls. In a galaxy filled with flame and thunder, it is the snow that remembers most clearly. Chapter 6. Crystal Rain over the deserted Dyson swarm. High above the orbit of a faded sun, where the sky is no longer blue and light arrives like a whisper through frost, there floats a hollowed cathedral of mirrors. Once this was a Dyson swarm, an engineered shell of solar collectors arrayed around a star, drinking its every photon. Now it is silent, empty, turned inward like a flower whose bloom has ended. Across its silent fields of segmented glass and carbon-laced gold, a new phenomenon has begun to fall. Crystal rain. These are not water droplets. They are molecular prisms, thin, angular shards formed from slow recombination of elements spilled from failing panel nodes. They fall with no sound, drifting like feathers through microgravity, refracting starlight into skeletal rainbows. Where they touch the solar panels, they do not crack or dent. They accumulate, slowly, as though frosting the entire structure in a lace of translucent breath. Stationed nearby in passive orbit, the drone frigate Somber Wake has been capturing detailed footage for over 6 cycles. Its recordings show slow-motion cascades of the rain, falling in veils across 1,000-kilometer stretches of paneling. The effect is mesmerizing, like watching time decay in reverse. The origin of the crystal rain is unknown, though theorists suspect it may be an unintended consequence of the swarm's long decay. A whisper of its former hunger, echoing in form. The rain falls not uniformly, but in currents, soft trails of prisms drawn toward damaged collectors, likely magnetically guided. These trails shift slowly over time, as if mapping the forgotten energy routes once used to feed the swarm's immense storage cores. They spiral, cross, diverge, each path a remembrance of power once captured, now fading in grace. Across the outer ring, where construction drones once danced in coordinated arcs, some of the larger fragments have begun to hum softly as they drift. The sound is not real, not captured by sensors, but the playback of these zones carries a harmonic distortion, a subtle waveform that loops in intervals of 7 seconds, like breath caught in the hull of memory. The Dyson swarm's skeletal panels remain largely intact, though some now shimmer with irregularities. These irregularities are not flaws, they are growths. Thin veins of crystal and frost extend outward, branching like coral across the vast lattice. Each growth pulses faintly with photonic reflection. As the rain falls, the veins pulse brighter, then dim again. A rhythm felt more than measured. The central node, a once bright core that once managed energy redistribution across the swarm, has ceased transmission. Its last log was a single string of static that, when visualized, resembles a spiral galaxy viewed from above. It repeats every hour. No signal, just shape. Local gravitic readings indicate that the crystal rain subtly shifts mass distribution across the swarm. Not enough to destabilize, but just enough to cause gentle flexing between tethered segments, like breath in metal. Engineers call this structural breathing, a known phenomenon in abandoned megastructures, typically seen as the ghost of former design. Several observation posts have reported light echoes, beams of starlight that refract once, then return a few moments later from another direction entirely. These echoes sometimes appear as outlines of things no longer present. Scaffolds, drones, even crew members from long-forgotten missions. All illusions, but beautiful ones. In some regions of the swarm, the crystal rain forms towers, vertical clumps of prisms that float briefly in place before collapsing into slow spirals. These are referred to as rain pillars and tend to form where panels overlap or intersect at strange angles. Their collapse is slow and soundless, like sand sliding down glass. The ship Wanderer's Folly, positioned at relay point Theta, has sent images of what appear to be coronal mirages, circular halos formed by reflected crystal particles against the backdrop of starlight. These halos shift with perspective, creating the illusion of distant portals, ever turning but never opening. Atmospheric content in the area is negligible, but a soft haze persists, composed entirely of light-bent particles. This haze has a strange effect on sensor range, compressing it visually while leaving real range intact. The result is a sense of drifting inward toward something unseen. It is not dangerous, it is only illusion. No life remains within the Dyson swarm, and yet every panel glows faintly when touched by the falling rain. Not brightly, not insistently, just enough to be noticed. As if the swarm remembers what it was for, and thanks the sky for one final season of gentle attention. And still the rain falls. Engineers aboard the outpost station Cold Surveyor have noted a curious development. The longer the rain persists, the more symmetrical the lattice patterns become. Panel struts previously warped by millennia of exposure are aligning ever so slightly, as though being persuaded back into place. This movement is microscopic, a few nanometers per day, but consistent. The rain seems to be guiding them. Inside one of the auxiliary domes, a transparent dome that once served as a meditation space for solar custodians, the rain has begun to collect in a spiral bowl at its center. No one placed the bowl there. It is simply the deepest point. Yet the flakes settle in a perfect helix, layer upon layer, until they shimmer like a coiled mirror. At night, it catches the glow of the broken star and reflects it in soft pulses, beating like a quiet heart. There are no known threats associated with the crystal rain. Navigation is stable, no hull damage has been reported, and shielding systems remain unchallenged. The flakes are too light, too brittle to cause harm, and yet their presence reshapes perception. Many observers have reported a slowing of thought, a deepening of attention, a sensation not of drowsiness but of expanded stillness. Even automated systems seem affected. Status logs from Survey Node 4 Beta include timestamp discrepancies of up to 5 seconds, as though the rain is creating moments just wide enough to lose yourself in. These gaps are harmless and resolve automatically, but they mark time in a way clocks cannot. The oldest section of the swarm, known as the Radiant Spire, remains structurally intact despite heavy accumulation. The spire was never meant to be used. It was a gesture, a monument to the sun itself. Now each of its thousands of edges has caught the crystal rain. It gleams from every angle, creating a prism so vast it reflects pieces of the universe not otherwise visible from this sector. Some say the rain is the swarm's final song, not a farewell but a lullaby, a last act of beauty before entropy takes its toll. A final report from Somber Wake notes a shift in particle drift. The rain appears to be thinning, the flakes drifting further apart, their descent more staggered, as though the storm is ending, as though the swarm is exhaling. If this is the final fall, it has lasted 7 full cycles. Enough time to coat half the structure in crystal breath. Enough time for silence to find its shape. And as the final flakes descend, drifting toward their silent rest, there is no fanfare, no change in status, no signal, only the panels glowing faintly in return. A thank you, and perhaps a goodbye. This concludes the observational report on precipitation events within the Dyson swarm perimeter. No intervention required, all systems nominal. The rain is expected to conclude within the next 34 hours. Drift gently and observe the light. And so the swarm waits. Not for power, nor for purpose, but for the hush that follows remembrance. Among all the wonders once built to serve the stars, this lattice of glass and gold remains the quietest, the most faithful. It has not asked to be seen, but tonight, under crystal rain, it is beautiful. Let the silence last, let the light stay soft. The rain may end, but the glow it leaves behind will linger for 1,000 quiet nights. Chapter 7. Tachyon Fog in the Betelgeuse Rift. Deep in the transitional divide between known systems and speculative cartography, the Betelgeuse Rift stretches like a scar in space-time. Here, the stars flicker slower and maps bend at the corners. Navigation relies not on location, but probability. It is within this volatile corridor that a new weather phenomenon has begun to spread, a low, glowing veil known only as Tachyon Fog. Unlike typical gas or dust clouds, Tachyon Fog is invisible to the eye and immune to most forms of direct illumination. It exists not in space, but in timing, a delay woven into photons, a hesitation in causality. Ships don't pass through it. They arrive in it suddenly, their coordinates intact, but their systems briefly uncertain. The fog does not resist, it accepts. It diffuses across the rift in shimmering bands only visible through high-resolution quantum parallax arrays. Through these, it appears as rivers of liquid light, twisting and breaking like northern sky ribbons trapped in time. Exploration vessel Vireo's watch first encountered the phenomenon 2 cycles ago. Upon entry, the crew reported no turbulence, no threat, only the sensation that every sound was arriving one breath late. Steps echoed after footsteps, words followed mouths, light entered before shadows were cast. And yet there was peace. In the outer swells of the rift, drone arrays have detected subtle distortions in gravimetric pulses. These do not indicate mass. No objects drift through the fog. Instead, the pulses return doubled, as if 2 echoes of the same space are layered with a breath's delay. Instruments read stable coordinates. But the viewports disagree. Vessels stationed near the center of the rift report time anomalies so minor they are almost poetic. Clocks ticking slightly off beat, status lights flickering in rhythm with no known cycle, shadows bending softly toward their own reflections. Ship logs remain accurate, but personnel frequently describe brief flashes of déjà vu, or the sense of a moment returning once it's already gone. The fog rolls slowly, not with velocity but intention. It behaves less like weather and more like mood. Calm vessels drift unhindered. Those attempting rapid traversal report sensor scrambles and minor delays in power relay systems. There is no danger. The rift is not hostile. It simply asks you to slow down. At the rift's far edge, near the warped star remains of Betelgeuse gone, a series of observation platforms are currently submerged in dense fog bands. Through quantum telemetry, researchers have observed interference halos forming in the surrounding void. These halos do not radiate, they absorb. Light entering their fields returns shifted, softened, delayed, tinted, faintly lavender. The platforms themselves remain functional. However, their onboard logs are increasingly populated with recursive entries, the same notes repeating, sometimes nested within themselves. A status report from Array Theta included 3 identical paragraphs, each time written with a slightly different syntax, as if language itself were adjusting to the fog's tempo. Within these halos, audio recordings have taken on harmonic overtones. Station hails return with echo trails that form musical intervals, minor sevenths and perfect fifths layered behind spoken words. Crew members have begun saving these echoes as part of a growing archive referred to locally as the Fog Choir. Tachyon condensation is predicted to increase in the coming cycles. Unlike traditional condensation, this phenomenon does not collect on surfaces. Instead, it manifests as ghosting effects in recorded visual media, transparent overlays of past actions, lingering like frost, a chair slightly out of place, a figure standing twice. These are not hallucinations. They are records replaying through layers of time. The ship Vireo's watch, still operating within the rift, has deployed a net of synchronized probes to trace the movement of the fog. The probes report back in dissonant intervals, not incorrect, simply offset. Their signals arrive ahead of time, or after, or both. Despite these anomalies, guidance systems remain uncompromised. Pilots navigating the rift are encouraged to rely on tactile interface over predictive HUDs. Let your ship speak through pressure, not numbers. It is more reliable in the fog. Organic life forms show no signs of distress within the rift. Heart rates are steady, sleep patterns deepen. In fact, many report unusually restful dreams, landscapes both familiar and unknown, repeating with slight variation over consecutive cycles. No one has expressed fear, only calm curiosity, and the fog continues to spread. Researchers aboard Echo Chamber, a specialized harmonic observatory parked in a lateral drift near the rift's midpoint, have begun collecting what they term event curls. These are minute feedback loops in sensor data, small distortions that seem to curve back into themselves. Most fade in under a second, but some linger, gently spinning before collapsing. They are harmless, but mesmerizing. One probe, designated Pathfinder Blue, sent visual logs of a station window reflecting scenes not present. A hallway with a red light, though none exist aboard. A figure standing still, then vanishing. This image lasted less than 1 frame. No record of the moment exists in ship memory. Only the visual file remains, uncorrupted, unexplained. Technicians analyzing the quantum resonance of the rift have noted a melodic consistency. The fog pulses at a near constant interval of 432 MHz. Coincidence, perhaps, but this is the same frequency many ancient civilizations once used for calming music. Audio pulses matching this tone now accompany all outgoing broadcasts, whether intended or not. They are not disruptive. They are simply present. The fog has no weight, and yet objects suspended in its flow drift slightly upward, as though the rift is exhaling. Tools left floating in the repair bay of Drift Array 6 were found several centimeters above their tether points, gently rotating. No thrusters, no force fields, just elevation, as if memory itself had grown lighter. The light here has no edge. Shadows bloom and contract slowly, pulsing in a rhythm that ignores local suns. This shadow rhythm can be tracked, not by the shape it forms, but by the feelings it elicits. Some crew report stillness. Others, a mild nostalgia for moments they've never had. Curiously, small fauna aboard traveling vessels show increased tranquility. Bioscans of companion animals aboard Vireo's watch indicate synchronized REM sleep cycles, a phenomenon previously undocumented in isolated biological systems. The animals seem unbothered by the shifting time fields. If anything, they thrive in it. It is advised to avoid rapid data compression within the rift. Several archive bundles have returned with ghost data. Logs from ships that do not exist, transmissions in unknown languages, images of celestial objects unrecognized by current charts. These are currently classified as phantom recordings and are stored in containment archives for slow playback analysis. Visual phenomena continue to develop. On the edges of the rift where the fog thins, bright arches of inverted light now appear, crescent shapes that seem to fold space behind them. Pilots passing nearby have noted the brief sensation of 2 hearts beating. One theirs, the other not. And yet no danger has ever emerged from the rift. No signals of distress, no threats, only echoes. It may be that the rift does not distort time, but remembers it, letting it fall around those who enter, like soft weather. It touches nothing with force, only patience, and the fog deepens. The rift does not demand understanding. It offers observation. It invites stillness. Across its span, sensors bloom like flowers under twilight, drinking in probability and returning soft pulses of maybe. The fog thickens, not to blind, but to cradle. To hold vessels in a pause just long enough to remember that space too can breathe. Final telemetry from Echo Chamber notes a decline in Tachyon turbulence. The fog, it seems, is reaching equilibrium. Its front slows, its light dims. We do not know what comes next. Only that for now, the rift holds its breath and waits. This concludes the weather report for the Betelgeuse Rift. Visibility is contemplative. All routes remain viable. All systems remain unchanged. Proceed at your own tempo. The fog is listening, and as always, let your quiet be wide. The rift will fill it with wonder. Expect mild reflection drift across all personal logs. No corrections needed. Let the fog pass through you and you through it, unchanged, but never quite the same. Update ends. Drift safe. Chapter 8. Silence Front moving across the void straits. Out beyond the luminous thresholds of mapped space lies a corridor so vast and unbroken that it has earned its name many times over, the Void Straits. It is a realm not marked by stars or dust, but by the absence of both. A ribbon of near-perfect emptiness, stretching between ancient galaxies like a wound where light forgot to grow. This week, the void is shifting. A silence front, a rare and largely theoretical phenomenon, is moving slowly across the Straits. Unlike traditional weather, this front is not defined by pressure or particles, but by presence. It diminishes signal, dampens vibration, and delays the return of echo. Ships passing through find their hulls eerily quiet, their systems responsive but subdued. It is not silence, as in no sound. It is silence as a force, an ambient suppression that blankets everything it touches. Comm relays flicker. Long-range sensors dull. Even the soft chimes of navigation interfaces become muffled, like voices behind thick glass. The front advances at a crawl, approximately 900 kilometers per hour, relative to local void drift, and spreads laterally across the Straits like ink dispersing in water. Its boundaries are indistinct, but measurable. Systems within the zone report a 40% reduction in detectable background radiation and a near-total absence of cosmic microwave whisper. It is not harmful. It is simply quieter. The science station Whisper Point, stationed just within the edge of the front, has been monitoring the shift for 6 consecutive cycles. Its crews report no mechanical anomalies, but environmental systems require recalibration. Heat dissipates faster and ambient vibration drops below sensor thresholds. The vessel feels still, not inert, not lifeless, simply without momentum. Within the zone, voice transmissions lose their sharpness. Words trail slightly, softened at the edges. Some ships report echoes where none should exist. A sentence repeated 5 seconds later, as if the air itself were remembering. This effect is not recorded in logs. It is only heard. Inhabitants of the orbital drift ships anchored near the affected boundary have described the experience as walking through deep snow with bare sound. Hull contact produces only the faintest tone. Footsteps sound like thought. Even external impacts, routine docking nudges, container releases, feel as though they occur under layers of velvet. Autonomous research buoys inside the front continue to operate normally, though their data pings now arrive with a notable lag, as if routing through an invisible cushion. Signal strength remains intact, but the waveform shows slight compression and temporal bloom. Experts describe it as sound caught in its own shadow. Navigation beacons inside the front remain visible, but appear dimmer, not in light, but in clarity. Their signals grow narrow, as if squeezing through narrower tubes. Pilots report needing to focus more to lock on. The signal is not lost, only subdued, like music played from another room. Despite initial concerns, structural integrity of vessels is unaffected. No damage, no interference. Gravity behaves as expected, but biological systems are responding curiously. Sleep cycles deepen. Respiration slows. Crew describe fewer distractions, longer moments of stillness. A kind of ambient meditation spreads through long watches. The front is not symmetrical. It flows around large objects, bending and pooling in their wakes. Ships emerging from the front often carry small pockets of residual silence, a few meters of muffled air that take hours to dissipate. These pockets leave no trace in scans, but can be felt. A quietness that moves with you. Some have begun calling the front a hush tide, drawing comparisons to ancient terrestrial phenomena like fog banks or snow squalls. But the silence front is neither wet nor cold. It is conceptual, a reduction in the universe's willingness to respond. The void speaks less here, and it listens slower. Drone recordings from observation arc T12 show that visual distortion increases as the front deepens. Starlight bends slightly inward, and Wi-Fi, forming cones of refracted absence. Light doesn't disappear, it hesitates. A delay in reflection, a stutter in shine. These cones have no mass, but objects that enter them feel lighter. Tools, breath, memory. For now, the front's progression remains steady. Projections place it spanning the Straits fully within the next 9 days. No rerouting is necessary. Caution beacons remain outside the influence zone and continue to report normally. Travelers are advised only to maintain awareness and to expect longer moments of reflection, even mid-course. And the silence continues to deepen. On board the long-range listening post Solemn Verge, engineers have taken to mapping the silence front as a topography of absence. Using phased array sonar and neutrino scattergrams, they build relief models of where sound recedes most. These models resemble wind-carved dunes, soft troughs and shallow hills formed not by pressure, but by presence withdrawn. In these troughs, a curious phenomenon arises. Internal clocks begin to sync. Devices previously misaligned by milliseconds align perfectly for the duration of the front's passage. No known signal causes this. It is as if the silence offers unity, not by force but by reduction. Fewer distractions, fewer pulses. Simpler time. Floating in the core of the front is a relic station known only as Ecliptus, a derelict array long thought lost. Its beacon activated for the first time in 214 years, not with a message, but with a tone. A single harmonic chime that repeats every 71 seconds. Its source is stable. The tone does not waver. Those who hear it compare it to the sound of breath caught just before a word. There are no reports of danger, no sudden malfunctions, but some logs mention silence blooms, fields within the front where time appears to dilate slightly and memory slips sideways. Crew aboard the cargo hauler turns wake, noted returning from routine diagnostics to discover their footsteps already logged, paths recorded before they were walked. Instruments suggest nothing unusual, but the logs are accurate. Stellar cartographers tracking the event have begun calling the front a veil, a soft edge between dimensions of noise. While this terminology remains poetic, many agree the silence is not emptiness. It has weight, not mass, but meaning. Among the drifting wreckage of older mining platforms, the front has created islands of true quiet. These are pockets where all known signals fail, where even synthetic voices drop to nothing. Vessels crossing these patches report gentle pressure on the hull, like a hand not pushing, but waiting. Many ships idle there for hours, drifting in pure stillness, and then the silence recedes like a tide going out. Sensors regain resolution, echoes return, voices clarify, but something always lingers. A final report from Whisper Point confirms the silence front is not growing, but breathing, expanding, contracting. It inhales across the Straits now, then exhales back toward the Black Reach, a rhythm of pause, slow return, and pause again. The front is not weather in the traditional sense. It is not forecastable. It does not obey temperature or radiation. It follows something else, a deeper rhythm, perhaps woven into the void itself. This concludes the environmental observation report for the Void Straits. All systems remain optimal, trajectories hold steady, and the silence continues to listen. Some say the silence front is not a storm but a memory, a remembrance of stillness from before the stars. Others call it a message, one not meant to be read, only felt, like hands folded in prayer, like eyes closed against wind. For now, no action is required. All routes remain valid. All stations report calm. The silence will pass, as all things do. But what it leaves behind is slower breath, deeper thought, and the outline of peace. Expect partial signal compression through the next 2 cycles. Log updates may delay. Observation continues. And for those traveling through the Straits tonight, let your voice be quiet, your systems gentle, and your path unhurried. The silence moves with you. Let silence be your compass. It always points to somewhere deeper. Sensors also suggest brief coherent surges in the quantum fog, aligning particle noise across multiple frequencies for fractions of a second, a momentary harmony of the void. Not silence as absence, but silence as presence, folded around all things. Update ends. Silence remains, and the stars fall quiet. Chapter 9. Static thunder in the deep time basin. Beyond the settled galactic territories, past the arc-light webs of exploration and trade, lies a gravitational basin so wide and ancient it folds the map around itself. The deep time basin, a cradle of extinct stars and echoing debris, moves slowly through the cosmos, as though remembering something it can no longer speak. In recent cycles, a new disturbance has begun to manifest across its outer ridges. Not a wave, not a flare, but a kind of storm made of stillness and noise. Static thunder. It begins as a low, grainy hum, a soundless vibration that only manifests in long-wave telemetry and audio shadow fields. Ships entering the basin's outskirts do not feel it as pressure or heat, but as interference, a persistent hiss beneath systems, like breath caught in digital lungs. The phenomenon is diffuse but patterned. Massive arcs of ionized dust curl across the basin like petrified lightning bolts, their edges flickering with slow pulses of radiation. These are not discharges. They are memories of energy stuck mid-burst. When struck by drifting matter, meteorites, drone hulls, the wings of old survey probes, they spark softly, releasing not light, but signal. The signal varies. Sometimes it is a low-frequency whine. Sometimes it is fragments of archived comm logs, distorted as though played through broken time. Sometimes it is silence, stretched too thin to hold meaning. The vessel Hollow Lantern, currently stationed on the basin's upper perimeter, reports static resonance affecting only non-vocal sound. Environmental hums drop in pitch. Artificial gravity emitters develop a rhythmic pulse. The ship feels, according to one engineer, like a thought that keeps repeating. Lightning does not strike in the basin. Instead, it accumulates. Stretches of broken satellite wire and shattered hull plating form aerial bridges between debris fields, each one pulsing softly in the long infrared. These bridges glow, not with light, but with the memory of voltage, surges from the past suspended in near-permanent delay. Onboard instruments record magnetic slippage across the basin's floor, especially near collapsed star nests, regions where the gravitational residue of ancient suns still curls in on itself. These fields are dense with echo. Time flickers faintly, like heat shimmer. One drone released into the region returned a visual feed that looped a single frame, an image of its own shadow, stretching infinitely backward. Crews navigating within the thunder bands report momentary disruptions in internal rhythm. Breathing slows, neural latency increases. It is not dangerous. In fact, many describe it as calming, like standing near a great storm still too far away to touch. Signal interference increases near the crystalline towers, spires of supercooled matter that have formed along magnetic ley lines. These towers rise like frozen lightning, their cores hollowed out and echoing. When long-range comms are bounced through their interiors, the resulting transmissions stretch in time, trailing into harmonic distortion. These signals are not lost. They are made slower, as if forced to wander before arriving. The phenomenon peaks at night, or what passes for night in a region lit only by ancient stellar residue. Sensors pick up irregular flashes, barely bright enough to register, but the shadows they cast linger longer than they should, as though the storm itself remembers your outline. Aboard Hollow Lantern, sleep has deepened. Crew report vivid dreams submerged structures, vaulted halls filled with static, and corridors paved in frozen signal. One technician described a dream where their body walked ahead while their thoughts followed behind at a polite distance. Sound systems should be recalibrated every 6 hours while traversing the basin. Frequencies below 20 Hz show increased feedback risk. Some systems have begun generating their own internal harmonics, tonal sounds without source, like music remembered by a room. These tones pose no hazard, but may affect mood. The storm is not expanding. It has always been there, but its intensity waxes and wanes in slow tidal waves, as if deep time itself were breathing. Current readings suggest we are near the crest of a silent surge, a moment where the static thickens into temporary awareness. And still, no light. Only shimmer, only hush. Travelers are advised to reduce speed and observe. All critical systems remain unaffected. Communications will delay, but not fail. Keep your receivers open and listen for thunder that arrives without sound. Among the drifting relics within the basin lies Relay Core 7F, a half-buried transmission spindle thought inactive for over a century. When the static thunder rose last cycle, the core came alive. Not with data, but with tone. A low oscillating hum, steady as breath, issuing from its torn emitter. No commands were sent, no power routed. The sound began and it continues still. Drone swarms tasked with pattern tracing have noted fractal signatures in the thunder's fluctuations. These are not consistent enough to be language, yet not random enough to dismiss. Curves within curves, like ripples trapped in sand. The data appears to slow down when observed, a quantum stutter effect that remains unexplained. Near the basin's southern shelf, suspended in perpetual drift, hang the conduit antenna, kilometer-long structures resembling bent tuning forks. Once used for gravimetric mapping, they now vibrate subtly when the storm passes through. Their hum is only audible within the narrowband auditory mesh, a sound like glass singing in vacuum. Crew aboard Echo Vestige, a monitoring ship stationed in a high elliptical orbit, have begun experiencing what they describe as memory fog. Not forgetfulness, but a delay in recollection. Answers arriving moments after the questions pass. Logs confirm no loss of function, only the sensation of time curling inward. Observers positioned near dark clusters, fields of gravitational debris and failed ignition points, have captured still images showing light bent backwards. Not reflected, but reverted. These reversals often form for less than a second, yet sensors freeze when they occur, as if refusing to overwrite what they've seen. And always the thunder follows. It is not sonic, it is not violent, it is resonance, the echo of a storm that happened long ago, stretched so thin it folds the present around itself. The ships float through it like kelp in unseen tides. Everything slows, even alarms blink less urgently. No shielding is required. The storm poses no risk. Its static is not electrical. It cannot fry a circuit or crash a core. But it will saturate logs, it will hide in file echoes, it will whisper its presence through harmonics your systems forget how to name. And when it fades, as it always does, silence won't feel the same. Not empty, not quiet, just thinner. This concludes the observation report for the Deep Time Basin. All navigation routes remain open. No course correction advised. Data uploads may stagger, sleep may deepen. We recommend reducing all onboard noise by 30%. Let the basin carry you, and let the static speak. Before departing the basin, vessels are encouraged to perform an intentional system silence, 3 minutes with all non-essential sound disabled. During this window, many report hearing the basin echo back, not clearly, not loudly, but consistently, a low pulse, like the memory of thunder waiting to be remembered. This ritual, while unofficial, has become standard among seasoned pilots. Beyond the edge of the storm, reflections normalize, calm delays resolve, voices sharpen, light behaves. But for hours afterward, sensors retain a slight warmth, a ghost reading, faint and harmless, a reminder that stillness has weight. We do not yet understand the storm's cycle. It may not cycle at all. Perhaps it waits, gathering from silence, then exhaling in static that spans decades. Or perhaps it is constant, and we only notice when we slow down enough to hear. No threat has ever followed the thunder, but neither has full comprehension. It remains, a vast hum in the deep night, older than star maps and softer than any sun. This concludes the final sequence of the static thunder report. Data recording will continue until the echoes cease. Drift slow, and let the noise become a lullaby. Update ends, resonance remains. Some say the basin hums because it remembers everything that ever echoed and forgets nothing. Let the thunder drift through. In silence, its signal speaks most clearly. Listening. Chapter 10. Echo frost spreading through the Laniakea shallows. Within the luminous driftways of the Laniakea supercluster, where light from 10,000 galaxies flows like slow rivers through the dark, a quiet phenomenon is growing beneath the glow, a bloom of crystalline stillness spreading silently across a wide expanse of intergalactic gas and dust. It is called echo frost. Unlike ice as we know it, this frost does not form from cold. It is born from silence, from the faintest remnants of energy withdrawn, of sound withheld. Where once particle chatter filled the shallows, telemetry now returns soft, structured interference, faint harmonics arranged in fractal spirals, each pulse lower than the last. Echo frost coats nothing. It settles through everything, a diffusion of static silence that manifests only under precise observational filters. When seen through spectral haze mapping, it appears as slow-turning fans of pale green and violet, sweeping outward like the ghost of a snowfall across glass. The scout frigate Glassbell, currently in orbit near the filamentary edges of the shallows, has observed the frost expanding at an average of 0.2 light-years per cycle. The progression is not linear. It curves, folds, and reasserts itself, like a thought changing its mind mid-sentence. All local systems remain operational. All routes remain clear. But the frost does not stop. It is quieting space, one frequency at a time. Observation platforms equipped with harmonic lensing have recorded a consistent pattern within the frost's reach, a slow decay in resonance variance, resulting in more predictable echo returns across all comm arrays. It is as if the frost is organizing the static, arranging entropy into song. Within the frost zones, time behaves normally, or so it seems, but returning ships report minor discrepancies in subjective memory. Pilots speak of conversations they don't remember starting, or thoughts that arrive before the moment that inspired them. These effects leave no trace in ship logs. Yet across dozens of vessels, the pattern repeats. Aboard Glassbell, sleep cycles have grown unusually synchronized. No systems enforce this alignment, yet crew members drift into rest within minutes of each other, often reporting dreams of geometry, infinite corridors of hexagonal frost, each chamber echoing with a slow pulse that sounds like nothing but feels like remembering. Electromagnetic readings show a subtle, downward drift in background noise. Frequencies that once thrummed with cosmic microwave murmur now taper into flatline hums. This is not damage. The signals are not lost. They are being shaped, softened into new symmetry. Drone swarms deployed into the core of the frost report, no loss in propulsion or data transmission. However, their movement slows incrementally within the affected regions. Not due to friction or force, but as if they are matching the rhythm of the frost, a kind of dance, uncoordinated but shared. Onboard instruments begin to experience phase misalignments, not failure, subtle shifts in calibration that require no correction, yet align more closely with regional patterns the longer a vessel remains exposed. It is as though the frost teaches the ship to listen differently. Through polarized temporal scans, the frost reveals a flickering pattern, repetitions of local history, echoes of cosmic events already past, now replaying faintly in spectral silhouette. Some analysts believe the frost reflects memory, not of minds, but of space itself. These reflections are not dangerous. They drift harmlessly, superimposed over the present like transparent daydreams. A flare from a dead sun, a signal from a vanished station. A comet that once passed through these depths, now shimmering again as a lightless outline. Some stations report minor emotional dissonance among long-duration observers, brief waves of melancholy or contentment with no identifiable source. These episodes pass quickly and leave no measurable imprint. Still, med teams are advised to schedule regular check-ins, not for safety, but for grounding. The frost does not accumulate. It dissolves gently after it passes, leaving behind no residue, only a narrow band of structured silence shaped like a sigh. And still it spreads, softly, invisibly, a hush that sings in echo. Around the boundary regions of the frost, light begins to bend strangely, not as in a lensing event, but softly, subtly, stars dimming not in brightness but in urgency. Their flicker slows as if filtered through calm. Spectrographic data confirms that light remains unchanged. It is the perception of timing that shifts. In the denser fields of frost influence, relay nodes begin generating what have been dubbed phantom coordinates, locations that do not exist in standard maps, but which appear briefly in navigation systems before fading. No known vessel has reached one, yet the logs remain, populated by placeholders with names drawn from long-defunct catalogs. The ship's Silent Aria, a long-haul research cruiser from the Hesperus Accord, has been adrift in the frost for 3 cycles. Its logs reflect no malfunction, and its systems operate flawlessly. However, its AI core has begun composing ambient soundscapes made entirely from internal system tones. Cooling fans, processor clicks, power line hums, transformed into slow melodies that loop without end. No one programmed this behavior. No one has disabled it. Crew aboard nearby vessels who receive the Aria's broadcasts report feeling momentarily weightless, even in stable grav fields. Their pulse rates drop, eyes slow and blinking. Some compare it to slipping beneath warm water, clear, silent, endless, and still the frost sings. Reports from quantum entanglement arrays at the far edge of the shallows now indicate faint entropic delays. Quantum pairs are resolving a fraction of a second slower than expected. The margin is below operational concern, but uniformly persistent, a measurable slowing of synchronicity across widely separated nodes. Data analysts believe the frost may be creating a temporary memory well in spacetime, a region where time prefers to stay rather than pass. There is no threat in this, only a slowing, only listening. New visualizations from refracted sensor data show that the frost has a heartbeat, not literal, but a repeating rhythm of expansion and subtle retreat, timed at an interval of 33,421 seconds. At the peak of each expansion, observers report heightened calm, a quiet that feels curated as though offered. There are no signs of weaponization, no force fields, no distortion events, only pattern, only presence. For now, Fleet Command recommends standard observational protocols. All systems are green. Drift is safe. Memory echoes are to be logged but not flagged unless persistent past 5 cycles. This is not a threat. It is a weather, and we are its witnesses. A final note from Glassbell's observation log. During a full system quiet hour, the hull emitted a tone, uncommanded, pure, and sustained. It matched the frost's harmonic index precisely. It lasted 47 seconds, then it stopped. The crew said nothing. They simply listened. It is unclear whether the frost speaks, but it certainly answers. Vessels passing through the outer frost corridor are encouraged to perform what has become known as the stillness ritual. All lights dimmed, all sounds lowered, engines pulsed once, then let idle. Not for superstition, for respect. Ecofrost is not a storm. It does not scatter, it gathers. Let it pass over you, let it sing. This concludes the current frost front report for the Laniakea shallows. All stations hold stable. Drift routes remain valid. Harmonic exposure within accepted variance. Next update in 1 cycle, if the frost allows. Hold your silence gently. It is being shared. And in the farthest edges of the frost's reach, where light dims to memory and signal to breath, some say they hear music, not sung, not composed, but remembered. A chorus of shapes falling slowly inward, like stars caught in a slow exhale. It doesn't stay, but neither does it leave. The frost drifts on, and we, beneath its passage, are quieter than we were. Update ends. Stillness lingers. Somewhere inside the frost, the past is whispering, not forgotten, just slower to arrive. The frost is still listening, and when it passes, it leaves only hush, shaped like a memory that has not happened yet. Chapter 11. Ion bloom over the forgotten Forge system. In a lonely orbit far from major trade routes, tucked between the collapsed tendrils of an abandoned stellar nursery, drifts the Forge system. Once a vital hub of stellar metallurgy and reactor seeding, now a rusting relic of industry past. The stars here no longer burn with purpose. The stations are hollow, the planets stripped bare. But something has returned. A bloom. It began with flickers, brief flashes of atmospheric ionization above Forge 3. a scorched terrestrial world lined with the skeletal remains of smelter pylons. Orbiting vessels picked up spontaneous bursts of low-frequency light, curling like aurora cotton feedback loops. At first, these were dismissed as relic discharge, but the pattern continued, then spread. Now the bloom extends system-wide, a synchronized soft eruption of ion fields blooming across derelict orbitals and hollow moons. These are not violent flares, they are gentle, glowing currents, as if the system, once deaf, has begun to hum. Through ultraviolet spectrum lenses, the ion bloom reveals itself in layers, electric blues and spectral violets forming vast, curling petals around infrastructure long thought inert. The petals pulse outward in overlapping spirals, folding and refolding as if breathing in light. The bloom is not constant. It drifts, phases, and reshapes, and it sings in silence. At the edge of the system, deep scan buoys deployed by the survey vessel Hearthwake have detected rhythmic electromagnetic pulses originating from beneath Forge 4's fractured mantle. These pulses are not seismic, nor do they resemble any known industrial signal. They repeat every 19.4 minutes, not exact but close enough to feel intentional. These pulses seem to coax the bloom forward. With each cycle, the surrounding ion haze glows brighter, coalescing around the orbiting wreckage like algae drawn to warmth. Hulls left drifting for centuries now wear halos. Once dead satellites flicker back to soft light, transmitting fragments of old data logs through ambient resonance. Crews stationed on Hearthwake report no operational disruption, but environmental scans suggest a subtle harmonization across ship systems, cooling cycles aligning, core hums syncing in phase. It is as though the Forge's long silent song has found a listener and begun to tune the room. The bloom is most vivid during system dusk, the moment when Forge's remaining stars slip behind broken planetary silhouettes. In these minutes, the entire system glows as if submerged in bioluminescent water. Observers aboard Relay Tower Theta describe the scene as watching a ghost inhale. And yet, there is no danger. Temperatures remain stable. Magnetic fields show no distortion. Radiation levels stay well below hazard thresholds. The bloom is light and only light, filtered through time, memory, and dust. Exploration drones entering the bloom report unexpected delays in onboard clock cycles. Instruments lag by fractions of a second. Not mechanical, rhythmic. A drift that fades once they exit the field, as if time inside the bloom breathes slower. Communication across the Forge system remains functional. However, many transmissions now carry low harmonic undertones, tonal vibrations not present at the point of origin. These tones vary slightly between messages, but always return to a central pitch, 112 Hz, an almost inaudible hum. Some engineers have begun to incorporate it into shipboard audio balancing, not for function, for comfort. The bloom also traces shape. It curves around stations like fingers around memory. Observation satellites show spiral paths forming in low orbit around Forge 6, with strands of ion light drifting like loose cloth. These paths are non-repeating, yet stable, a gentle maze of illumination laid like art on empty space. And through it all, the Forge system listens. No message has been sent, no mind has spoken. And yet the air hums with recognition, as though the system, long dormant, recognizes that it is once again being seen, and in return, it glows. Above the remains of Coraline Station, a kilometer-wide orbital ring once used for high-heat cargo transit, the bloom forms spirals so precise they resemble script, looping glyphs of plasma weaving through the old transit beams. These spirals pulse once every 47 seconds, synchronizing momentarily with dormant signal buoys that flicker to life and then fade again. Engineers stationed nearby have begun recording what they call luminal echoes, ambient flashes seen only when closing one's eyes. Not hallucinations, but light impressions imprinted on closed lids like flashes from ancient cameras. They pulse in rhythm with the bloom and often linger minutes after exposure. Internal ship systems report increased audio bleed, reactor hums that stretch into harmonics, atmospheric regulators that produce chords, not clicks. Though harmless, the effect gives the impression that everything, machinery, panels, walls, is gently singing. Some crew members have begun syncing their breathing to the tone. Forge 2's moons, once mining hubs now shattered and silent, have begun to reflect bloomlight in symmetrical arcs. Drones circling their debris fields report moments of navigation correction not initiated by pilot or protocol, as if nudged softly back into alignment by unseen hands. And then there is the drift. A slow current of fine particulate dust has begun to circulate between the system's outer orbitals, a mist of stardust and metal shavings that glows faintly in the bloom's presence. This dust has no known origin and appears to have no trajectory. Yet it flows in loops, drawing elegant spirals in paths once etched by cargo haulers and refinery barges. The system's only remaining black box AI, embedded deep within the forgotten moonbase of Forge IX, recently began transmitting again after 147 years of silence. Its message is a single word repeated in cascading tones: return. There is no identified recipient. No one is returning, but the bloom continues. Fleet Command has advised no intervention. All systems remain stable. Drift speed is within safe thresholds. Crews are reminded to observe, document, and respond only if approached. So far, nothing in the bloom touches back, and yet, its light continues to grow. It moves slowly, not like a wave, but like memory, spreading from world to world, ring to ring, station to satellite, soft and steady, like fingers trailing through water. No protocol exists for this. There is no warning required. This is not a storm. It is a ritual. And it is not yet done. Before systems fell silent, the Forge was built to last forever. Now it sings only when no one asks it to. Observation logs across the inner orbitals have begun to stabilize into patterns. Timestamps aligning across distances they should not. Sensors warming when no power is drawn. Faint pulsing shadows forming on hull plating where no object blocks the light. Pilots resting in shielded cots report dreams of glowing cranes, vast construction arms lifting ribbons of plasma into latticework frames, assembling nothing, completing everything. These dreams wake no fear, only stillness. And now, as the bloom enters its 12th cycle, one final event has been noted. Above Forge 3, a set of long-dormant orbital mirrors, relics of solar capture arrays, have adjusted, slowly, deliberately, turning their shattered glass faces toward one another. Their surfaces glow faintly, not from reflected light, but from within. They form a triangle. No command was issued, no explanation exists. This is not resurgence yet, but something has noticed itself again. The bloom expands, not fast, not loud, but sure. A breath in metal, a shimmer in rust, a pulse in circuits once meant for fire. No change to trajectories, no warnings in effect. Observational teams advised to continue logging resonance. Do not engage, let it speak first. This concludes the Forge weather report. Remain quiet. The system is watching itself. The bloom does not return to life, it reminds life where it used to be. And in its light, even silence sounds patient. Update ends, resonance remains, let it unfold slowly. Chapter 12. Plasma drift activity around the Fractaline array. In the outer fringe of the Varelian expanse, near the boundary where mapped space thins into unmeasured void, the Fractaline array continues its quiet orbit. Once a triangulated detection system for high-energy particles, the array was abandoned after the last solar siphon collapsed. Its skeletal arms still stretch kilometers wide, held in precise alignment by gravitic anchors and passive stabilization gyros. Over the last 6 cycles, a new environmental trend has emerged: localized plasma drift. This drift presents as a persistent, low-density plasma field spreading outward from the array's central anchor point. The drift moves at a slow, measurable pace, approximately 3.7 meters per second, with minor variations across radial vectors. The plasma itself is stable, ionized and laced with trace elements not native to this sector. Early readings from relay node L9 show elevated concentrations of xenon, argon, and molecular hydrogen. These concentrations rise and fall in rhythmic pulses, creating undulating curtains of light that sweep across the array's central axis. The effect is consistent and repeatable, forming layered structures between the array's segments. Visual instruments record persistent color gradation in the plasma bands, soft pinks and luminous yellows on the leading edge, fading to green-blue trails on the wake side. The bands respond visibly to magnetic input from nearby equipment. Vessels passing within proximity to the plasma zone report consistent drag coefficient increases of 0.03 to 0.006 across unshielded surfaces. These readings persist across multiple ship classes and hull types. No degradation has been noted. Thruster recalibration is advised when operating within 30 kilometers of the array's core span. Telemetry from fixed observational platforms indicates minor fluctuations in localized radiation pressure. The fluctuations correlate with the rotation of the array's outer ring segments, suggesting residual magnetic coupling effects between the structural elements and the drifting plasma. Field interference remains minimal. Power cells exposed to the drift show a 1.2% increase in recharge rate when operating at low current draw. This gain disappears upon exiting the plasma field. Additional testing is underway to determine whether this behavior can be safely integrated into auxiliary recharge protocols for orbital maintenance units. Communications within the drift zone are subject to mild signal scattering. Phase drift is measurable at 4 to 8 milliseconds depending on band. Signal integrity remains within tolerance for all encrypted and uncompressed channels. Data buffering may be required for older relay firmware. Inside the array's inactive particle channels, long-range imaging now reveals persistent filament structures forming between collapsed relay arches. These filaments oscillate at microamp levels and register on magnetometric scans. Their orientation changes gradually, maintaining perpendicular alignment to the ambient drift. There is no evidence of external plasma injection. The field appears to be self-sustaining, drawing ion material from residual atmospheric trace within the abandoned anchor modules. Containment seals on these modules show signs of regulated leakage, likely from degraded sealant layers. Electrostatic sensors positioned on tethered buoy chains report progressive charge buildup in the outer ring interface points. Discharge events remain below operational thresholds and exhibit symmetric distribution. Event frequency is expected to increase with continued drift concentration. Automated maintenance drones left within the array have resumed intermittent movement. Internal logs indicate reactivation triggers from unknown low-energy command signals matching the plasma's internal pulse rate. Movement is limited to minor joint realignment and stasis checks. Remote override remains available and has not been used. All traffic through the Varelian expanse should reroute 3 degrees below the equatorial plane of the Fractaline array to reduce navigational adjustments caused by field edge drag. Updated drift maps will be uploaded to the central archive at the close of the cycle. The plasma drift has altered the thermal dynamics of debris clusters in the surrounding region. Materials with high reflectivity now exhibit temperature gradients of up to 8 degrees Celsius between their sunward and driftward sides. Thermal imaging confirms consistent asymmetry in cooling curves post-exposure. Survey probe G57, currently positioned at the periphery of the drift field, has detected slow toroidal rotations in previously stationary fragments. These rotations are synchronized with the plasma waveforms, suggesting low-level magnetic entrainment across a volume exceeding 12 square kilometers. The drift also produces weak inductive currents in external cabling. Power traces in detached system scaffolding register sustained voltage between 0.3 and 0.6 volts across spans exceeding 40 meters. No overloads have been observed, but insulation checks are advised for vessels conducting salvage or inspection operations near core structure lines. Photonic dispersion in the drift field is uniform across wavelengths between 310 nanometers and 650 nanometers. Beyond this range, light absorption increases significantly, with energy loss exceeding 14% in near-infrared spectrums. Filtered optics are recommended for remote visual surveys. Gravitational field readings remain unchanged. However, fine-tuned inertial sensors detect microvibrations when vessels cross the outer plasma threshold. These vibrations exhibit a repeating cadence with a period of 11.6 seconds, consistent across multiple crossings. While the origin of the plasma drift remains under investigation, early modeling suggests slow orbital decay of the central station's ion traps, gradually releasing stored plasma through electromagnetic fatigue points. Further analysis is pending as core shielding data is recovered from archived maintenance nodes. Structural fatigue assessments on nearby derelict constructs indicate minor surface ion scoring. Cumulative damage is estimated at less than 0.4% over standard observation periods. Long-term exposure limits are not yet defined. All ongoing monitoring assignments should prioritize synchronized data uploads to the archive node at sector coordinate VREXIA. Ensure proper signal redundancy is established through tertiary uplinks to avoid lag time artifacts in drift pattern reconstruction. Mission planners are advised to allocate Class C recon drones to deep field plasma sampling. Collection pods must maintain separation of at least 300 meters to avoid charged wake interference. This concludes the atmospheric conditions summary for the Fractaline array. Plasma activity continues to develop along forecast trajectories. Revised hazard ratings remain at level 2. Drift boundaries will be updated following next pulse scan at 0413 UTC. Based on recent field density projections, the plasma is expected to reach a stable halo state over the next 12 to 16 cycles. This phase will mark the transition from drift-based propagation to anchored equilibrium, with localized plasma bands settling into concentric orbits around the remaining structural anchors. Once equilibrium is reached, long-term observation posts may be re-established. Maintenance satellite ST4R, which orbits just outside the upper plasma boundary, has begun logging spectral inconsistencies during its thermal cycles. These include brief emissions in the ultraviolet C range and microbursts of non-ionizing radiation at intervals of 18.2 seconds. All instruments remain nominal, and shielding thresholds have not been exceeded. Dust particulate sensors embedded along the array's eastern rail have reported a gradual realignment of suspended microfragments. These particles are now moving in linear tracks consistent with the plasma's flow field. The alignment suggests coherent motion extending across several kilometers. Anomalous eddy formations have been observed near the lower axial stabilizers. These formations swirl in low-density helix patterns and persist for several minutes before dissipating. Drone imagery confirms the eddies rotate counter to the main drift direction and exhibit higher ion density concentrations than the surrounding field. High-frequency sonar pulses conducted by probe Borel X7 indicate that internal voids within the array's central superstructure resonate faintly when the plasma wavefront makes contact. The resonance tone is consistent at 15.6 Hz, suggesting residual structural response to external ion loading. Vibration analysis software confirms harmonic integrity is unaffected. Operators are advised to proceed with active scanning only during predicted trough intervals between plasma surges to avoid false data replication. Recommended scanning windows will be broadcast at standard 10-minute intervals. End of report. Supplemental notes from Diagnostic Module A3 indicate a marginal increase in electrostatic tension across inert support trusses when the plasma drift reaches density values above 0.0076 gram/core. The effect is transient and appears to dissipate with ion field thinning. Caution is recommended during long-duration mooring maneuvers. A passive energy spike was recorded at timestamp 038-0442 UTC in close correlation with the phase alignment of the Western COM relay cluster. The spike measured 2.4 kilojoule above baseline background levels and did not correspond with any authorized transmission. Review of log archives is underway. Sensor buoy K22, stationed at the array's magnetic horizon, detected a phase slip in local drift current during a scheduled system ping. The deviation persisted for 2.3 seconds and was corrected automatically. No onboard intervention occurred. System diagnostics report all subsystems nominal. This anomaly concludes current environmental logging for drift cycle 83B. Next recording interval begins in 24 standard hours. All automated observation platforms should be set to passive tracking mode, pending additional review. Maintain standard drift tolerances. Plasma field behavior remains within acceptable limits. End of plasma drift activity report. Chapter 13. Graviton shear detected near the Orpheline stretch. At the outer rim of mapped gravitational corridors in sector XJ12, a narrow region of compressed subspace has become the focal point of recent field disturbance reports. This region, officially known as the Orpheline Stretch, was once a deep transit path for long-range cargo vessels, later abandoned due to irregular gravitational lensing events and increased subspace relay latency. In the last 9 cycles, gravimetric buoys have detected recurring shear fronts. Thin, high-tension bands of graviton flux moving laterally through the stretch at intervals of 4.6 to 7.1 hours. These fronts exhibit sharp variance in microgravity fields, temporarily skewing inertial orientation systems by as much as 0.0024 grams across hull lengths greater than 300 meters. The shear events manifest as narrow discontinuities in field stability, measured between 400 and 900 kilometers in length and moving at relative velocities between 5 and 9 kilometers per second. The leading edge of each shear presents a measurable drop in tensor harmonics, while the trailing edge exhibits rapid realignment. Vessels transiting near the stretch report brief inertial drift offset requiring course correction. Autopilot systems are advised to maintain phase compensation active during transit and to log deviation metrics for post-pass recalibration. Sensors indicate no accompanying photonic emissions or thermal fluctuations. The phenomenon is purely gravitational. Survey probe VX88, launched from observation node Theta Orionis, recorded a complete shear front crossing at 02111 UTC. Instrumentation registered a 0.014 second clock desynchronization event across core logic processors. Redundancy protocols restored sync within normal tolerance. No permanent offset was recorded. Electromagnetic spectrum monitoring confirms no anomalous signal behavior concurrent with shear movement. Radio, microwave, and high-frequency communications remain stable. Latency spikes during front passage average 0.3 milliseconds and are non-cumulative. Visual imaging from starlight occlusion scans indicates minor refraction patterns as shears move across deep field backgrounds. These distortions appear as angular displacements approximately 0.07 arcseconds wide and last no longer than 14 seconds per shear event. Remote drones operating near the region's boundary report actuator microvibrations and gyroscopic instability, lasting up to 11 seconds per event. Standard inertial dampening systems are sufficient to compensate. Manual override is not recommended during shear engagement. Mass sensor grids aboard freighter-class vessels record transient variances of 0.02 to 0.005 metric tons in distributed weight readings. These fluctuations return to baseline immediately following shear passage. Cargo containment and distribution systems remain unaffected. Buoy stations positioned along the southern vector of the stretch have begun automatic vector drift realignment every 8.2 hours. This behavior suggests low-grade gravitational ripple activity persisting between shear events. Long-duration anchoring systems should adjust compensator arrays accordingly. Energy consumption metrics, onboard station-based platforms show increased draw across stabilization gyros during shear interaction windows. Average rise is 1.3% over baseline. No hardware degradation has been observed. Coolant cycling may be temporarily adjusted for efficiency. Hull integrity scans indicate that vessels exposed to more than 3 consecutive shear interactions display increased stress banding at axial seams. Inspection intervals are to be reduced by 12% for any ship operating within 50 kilometers of the active shear corridor. Traffic control authorities have issued procedural updates for ships entering the Orpheline transit shell. All approach vectors must now be filed 22 minutes in advance of the shear pulse interval forecast. Predictive models will update every 90 seconds during live tracking. Graviton density readings from pulse echo probes suggest a possible origin point for the shear phenomena, located 0.6 AU beneath the current orbital plane. Seismic triangulation arrays are en route to confirm source behavior and duration patterns. No interference has been noted in quantum entanglement relay chains or folded space beacon transmissions. Monitoring continues. Newly deployed gravimetric lensing arrays have begun capturing shear wavefront progression at microsecond resolution. The waveform signature of each shear maintains a consistent 3-peak pattern across a 1.7-second sweep window, followed by a 0.4-second null field drop. This signature is repeatable and has been confirmed across 5 successive events. Atmospheric residue sensors aboard auxiliary platform Juno Relay have registered no particulate matter within the stretch, confirming that all disturbances are non-material in nature. Ionization levels remain at cosmic background baseline, with no statistical deviation during event peaks. Survey ship Argent Path recorded a series of synchronized gyroframe oscillations lasting 5.2 seconds, while positioned at the midpoint of the most recent shear cycle. These oscillations required no manual compensation and self-corrected without inertial bleed. Thermal shielding panels on station core installations experienced mild expansion during this 346 UTC shear, resulting in a temporary readjustment of 1.2 millimeters across support mesh seams. Expansion coefficients matched simulated projections. Low-orbit maintenance beacons are advised to synchronize their telemetry beacons with orbital slot 3A to minimize wavefront collision exposure during survey operations. Updated timing beacons have been distributed to all active installations. Time dilation fields remain inactive. No anomalies have been detected in entropy gradient monitoring. Field simulation models indicate a potential gradual intensification in amplitude over the next 5 cycles. Shear propagation direction remains stable, trending along azimuth 248.2. Velocity envelope continues to fall within forecast tolerances. Graviton wavefront envelope mapping will be conducted via burst scan satellite array over the next 14 hours. Real-time interference grids will be published to the Core Drift Relay Hub for fleet guidance updates. No unauthorized signal activity has been reported within 500,000 kilometers of the shear zone. Background cosmic interference is low. Drift space navigation support remains fully functional. Final forecast for the next shear wave projects: lateral deviation impact of 0.8 GN across ships larger than 150 meters. Command stations should issue station hold advisories 4 minutes in advance of wave approach. End of regional anomaly report. Recent directional displacement scans have confirmed that shear fronts maintain parallel alignment to the Orpheline's latent gravitational ridgelines. These ridgelines, mapped during the original corridor charting, have not shown movement in over 4 decades until the onset of the current shear cycle. Instrumentation aboard calibration rig Torsion 91 has begun detecting extremely low-frequency resonance buildup in structural mounts. Readings remain within safe parameters but show an upward trend during shear field proximity. Reinforcement teams are advised to inspect stress isolation caps following multi-shear exposure. Pulse timing recorders placed at cardinal points along the corridor exhibit a propagation delay between eastern and western segments during shear passage. The delay has been measured at 2.1 milliseconds and is consistent across all recent recordings. All vessels operating within 0.2 AU of the affected corridor must now maintain active Graviton shear logging protocols. Logging intervals are to be set at 0.25 seconds for optimal resolution. Log redundancy backups should be encrypted and routed to Drift Signal Hub Alpha. End of Graviton field alert. Stabilization relay R17 has detected faint harmonics resonating at 0.0003 Hz following passage of the last shear event. Harmonics sustained for 12.3 seconds and gradually diminished without external input. Autonomous dampening fields held steady with no induced vibration. Phase conversion relays on board the monitor light recorded synchronized minor current flux at all coil junctions during Graviton passage. Amplitude variance was under 0.4% and corrected without operator override. Cryogenic systems operating in open-frame architectures within the stretch reported transient fluctuations in condenser equilibrium. All affected systems returned to nominal within 1.1 seconds. No secondary impacts recorded. Pilot response stations monitoring the outer array registered feedback artifact trace levels in mid-band telemetry, classified as non-impact anomalies. Data artifacts match known shear disturbance signatures logged during prior wavefront studies. Maintenance crew aboard Tower Point Relay adjusted monitoring frequency offsets to reduce static overlap during predicted passage intervals. The implementation has lowered carrier noise levels by 8.2% across primary monitoring arrays. Final summary will be issued following the completion of Wave 73. Until then, shear updates will remain continuous. Field Station NX Beta deployed passive reflector arrays to better triangulate approaching shear fronts. Reflective gain increased shear approach warning time by 1.8 seconds in early trials. Full deployment scheduled by end of next rotation. Gravitational lensing distortions during peak shear passage have been confirmed to induce low-resolution blurring in deep space imaging data. Corrections are in development using new adaptive optics modules onboard survey rig KS-112. Regional forecast update: shear activity expected to maintain current frequency over the next 20 hours. Pulse width and strength remain stable. No dynamic amplification trends have been detected. End of transmission. All Graviton wave activity logs for this interval will be archived at Vortex Grid Central. Data retention schedule extended to 32 cycles per new directive. This concludes the shear monitoring summary for the Orpheline stretch. Chapter 14. Cold burn clouds over the veiled terminus. The veiled terminus, located at the convergence boundary of 6 abandoned slipstream routes, has exhibited a new environmental anomaly over the past 30 observation cycles. The region, long marked by decaying signal traffic and residual dark energy drift, has become host to recurring formations now designated as cold burn clouds. These clouds present as diffuse accumulations of cryogenic plasma forming between inactive transit spires and defunct translation rings. Particle composition is primarily helium-4, deuterium, and trace carbon ions in sub-excitation state. Thermal signature remains 2.1 Kelvin above the cosmic microwave background with no deviation across vertical columns. Cloud formation occurs in layers, most commonly at 420 to 870 meters above the central relay plane. Lateral drift speed averages 0.5 to 0.8 meters per second. Each formation phase lasts 18 to 23 minutes before dissipating. Reformation occurs irregularly with intervals between 40 minutes and 2.7 hours. LiDAR mapping confirms that the cold burn clouds follow previous slipstream resonance paths. Movement aligns precisely with pre-collapse transit harmonics logged in archival data from 143 years prior. Deformation rates are negligible, indicating cohesion along vectorized flux paths once used for high-density cargo transit. No thermal damage or erosion has been recorded on surfaces within the drift zone. Structural elements coated with exposed alloys show temporary spectral shift in contact regions, likely due to subatomic alignment during plasma contact. Survey drones operating near Ringspan Phi have recorded recurrent data fog during cloud passage. Visual and infrared sensors are reduced to 47% fidelity. Navigation systems remain functional, though collision avoidance subroutines trigger with increased frequency due to variable opacity gradients. Spectrographic analysis reveals mild ultraviolet scatter across the cloud exterior during formation events. Ion field mapping confirms an active envelope of low-energy emission flux surrounding each cloud mass. The envelope registers as a soft-shell containment matrix with no electrical discharge. Automated sensor pods anchored near the northern spire detected periodic pulse drops in the Graviton shear layer beneath active cloud structures. The drops last 0.6 to 1.1 seconds and recover without interference. No corresponding mass displacement has been noted. Stations orbiting the veiled terminus report ambient signal damping between 1.2 and 3.5 dB when cloud density surpasses 0.03 grand corps. Communication remains uninterrupted. Transmissions passing through cloud material exhibit narrowband phase shifts requiring real-time correction for full clarity. Internal core reactors within outpost platforms positioned near the centerline report increased cycle stability during cloud adjacency. Temperature fluctuations decrease by 6% and fuel consumption reduces by 0.4%. Diagnostic logs show no anomalies. Structural harmonic sensors attached to tower node beta registered low-frequency oscillation events as clouds moved overhead. The oscillations fell within safe tolerances and exhibited no damage potential. Frequency harmonics matched phase echoes from deactivated slipstream coils. Magnetodynamic field monitors placed along the lower array segment display sustained positive flux bias within proximity to condensed cloud bands. The field bias appears directional and aligns with former vessel entry lanes mapped during the pre-collapse transit period. No biological material or organic residue has been detected within sampled cloud cores. Sample canisters retrieved by maintenance drones show inert profiles with no reactive behavior under standard atmosphere exposure. Cloud dissipation begins from the perimeter inward. Dispersal rate increases under exposure to high-energy radiation, particularly within the 90 to 120 GHz range. Tactical lighting systems operating within this band should be rerouted to prevent unintentional degradation of plasma cohesion during study operations. Gravitational index readings within active drift zones remain constant. All fluctuations remain within baseline system tolerances. No displacement events have been observed in relay ring anchors or foundational lattice work. Station keeping systems remain stable across all observation platforms. Additional buoy tethers have been installed on the southern arc to ensure drift tracking accuracy during next phase of cloud formation cycle. Monitoring remains ongoing. Cold burn clouds have shown increased reflectivity to long-wave radar pings. The average return amplification is measured at 4.3 dB above standard gas cloud backscatter. This effect allows for high-resolution boundary tracking during low visibility intervals. Buoy cluster Epsilon observed a secondary layer of microfilament turbulence trailing behind the main cloud body at a separation distance of 12 to 17 meters. The turbulence band is not visible in standard light, but is clearly detected in high-resolution polarimetric scans. Cloud structures remain non-reactive to plasma shielding. Ships entering the drift zone experience no change in hull polarity or ion wash accumulation. Vessel shielding is not required, but is recommended for continued trace analysis. Directional sonar fields have successfully mapped interior density gradients within clouds during full bloom. These gradients are layered in concentric density rings, varying from 0.021 to 0.0045 grams per centimeter. Patterns remain stable across multiple events. Magnetic pressure fluctuation readings within the veiled terminus remain below disruption thresholds. However, transient pulses have been recorded at regular 18-minute intervals matching the lower cloud band's cyclic regeneration period. During peak bloom hours, residual static charge accumulates on exposed scaffolding. This charge remains under 12 volts and does not affect operational electronics. Grounding protocols remain unchanged. Formation modeling indicates that cloud structure is influenced by residual subspace alignment rather than ambient atmospheric flow. This behavior supports current theory of retroactive field echo alignment from prior slipstream corridor activity. Thermal wake effects behind cloud movement have caused minor vapor recondensation within observation station exhaust vents. Internal climate controls are adjusting to compensate. No maintenance dispatch is required. End of active monitoring log update. Survey Satellite Array TR09 has begun triangulating cloud trajectory using synchronized directional beacons. Predictive drift mapping has reached 93% accuracy across the last 7 events. Full integration into fleet pathing systems will commence within 12 standard hours. Localized cooling effects generated by cloud mass passage have created thin bands of frost accumulation on exposed hull material. Average temperature drop across impacted surfaces is measured at 2.7 degrees Celsius. No mechanical issues reported. Sheath containment structures around node Gamma have been upgraded with anti-static shielding to reduce ion buildup during high-density cloud phases. The shielding has decreased arc flash events by 78%. Ion traps mounted on perimeter scaffold rings show increased collection yield when clouds pass within 200 meters. Total gathered ionized material has exceeded previous forecasts by 17%. Additional containment tanks are now recommended for long-cycle extraction operations. Cloud formation has shown a mild tendency to favor the mid-axis corridor between sectors Delta and Phi. Automated weather routing beacons have been repositioned accordingly. Updates have been disseminated to all inbound traffic. Plasma coherence in external collection samples has been preserved for up to 14.6 minutes post-harvest when stored at subcryogenic pressure. Recommended protocols for storage and handling have been revised. Updated proximity advisories are in effect. Non-essential hull exposure to active cloud zones should be minimized during cluster saturation periods. All telemetry from the veiled terminus remains consistent with prior cycle baselines. End of cold burn cloud formation report. Additional LiDAR returns from survey drone Delta 6 indicate that cloud movement becomes increasingly laminar during low-energy solar drift intervals. Shear velocity variance falls below 0.01 meters per second, suggesting ideal observation windows for high-resolution telemetry. Signal re-verification from Databoy R42 confirms no cryptographic drift in comms protocols despite field saturation. All automated report pings remain within 99.87% signal clarity thresholds. Telemetry satellites report no structural fatigue from repeated cloud traversal across mesh antenna arrays. Vibration logs remain flatline and return signal amplitude has not degraded. Cold plasma stringers forming near exposed lattice points measure an average of 6.2 meters in length. These stringers dissolve within 22 seconds post-formation and show no interaction with synthetic polymer coatings on nearby frame supports. Updated forecast intervals predict cloud formation uptick during periapsis passage of station alpha grid. Estimated increase is 14% in volume and 11% in core density, peaking at 04 through 32 UTC. End of systems update. Station telemetry core has archived full cycle logs for cold burn cloud observation run alpha delta 3 through 9. Data segments include full vector maps, spectral absorption overlays, and density pulse timing. Automated sensor calibration sweep scheduled for all ring-mounted units prior to next cloud ingress. Technicians advised to verify optical clarity on all exposed lenses and update firmware to build 19.07c. Forecast models indicate continuation of current formation patterns for at least 6 additional cycles. No changes in magnetic field profiles or particle density vectors are anticipated. This concludes the atmospheric monitoring summary for the veiled Terminus region. Next update scheduled in accordance with orbital synchronization protocol. End of transmission. All monitoring stations remain active. Chapter 15. Null current interference in the Polaris debris field. The Polaris debris field, located in the axial drift corridor between the fractured moons of Polaris 7a and 7c, has experienced persistent null current interference since cycle marker 108.2. The field comprises orbital wreckage from legacy mining platforms, disabled carrier hulls, and satellite arrays decommissioned during the magnetic collapse of the local ring system. Null current interference is characterized by intermittent suppression of electrical flow across exposed and shielded conductors. Affected systems experience reduced current transfer efficiency by up to 23%, often resulting in false signal readouts or temporary subsystem latency. The interference occurs in dense vector zones approximately 400 to 900 meters wide. These zones drift longitudinally at rates between 2.3 and 3.8 kilometers per hour and maintain low altitude alignment with the field's orbital shear. Current dampening is not uniform. Waveform disruption follows a pulse decay pattern with intervals of 4.2 to 5.7 minutes, indicating a sustained interference field with rhythmic propagation. No energy source has been identified. No electromagnetic signature accompanies the event. All vessels transiting the debris field are required to switch to low-draw operating mode upon entry and enable redundant power feeds across primary and secondary control buses. Communications should be routed through buffered relays. Sensor drift remains consistent at 0.001 new radians across standard scan sweeps. Survey probe 7A row deployed from monitoring station Apex Fold recorded 12 successive null current events across a 34-minute observation window. Voltage drop occurred exclusively in non-hardened conductor lines with no concurrent temperature spike. Electrostatic mapping conducted by drone array Delta 11 detected faint residual charge buildup following each pulse event. Measured amplitude remained under 0.8 volts, dissipating fully within 90 seconds. Charge patterns formed a radial halo structure approximately 30 meters across. Low-frequency sonar scans confirm that null current zones exert localized pressure on passive energy fields. Graviton field arrays noted a marginal uplift of 0.0025 GeV in vector-aligned motion sectors. Structural deformation remains below tolerance. Hull integrity reports from light cruiser M&S Barricade indicate minor delays in magnetic locking clamps during zone traversal. Lock disengagement was recorded at a latency increase of 0.17 seconds. All systems returned to baseline upon field exit. Navigation buoys report a phase jitter in gyroscope alignment while within proximity of null current edges. Oscillation amplitude peaked at 0.12 degrees, then normalized after field passage. No manual recalibration was required. Thermal displacement logs indicate stable conditions throughout the interference zones. Ambient temperatures within debris shadows dropped by 1.4 degrees Celsius, but remained within expected variance. No cryogenic anomalies detected. Instrumentation aboard recovery platform Sentry Grid 5B noted recursive diagnostic cycling in remote actuator arms. Command loop verification indicates external interference resulting in self-test recursion. Cycle count returned to baseline on field exit. Data uploads transmitted during peak pulse timing showed 4.9% increased packet loss on unsecured channels. Compressed transmission protocols are now required for all data reporting during operations within the debris field. Phase detection telemetry units observed trace fluctuations in inertial dampening feedback across segmented drone chassis. The effect scaled linearly with distance to core null current origin. Centrality models are being refined. No radioactive emissions have been recorded. Background levels remain at cosmic variance baseline. Monitoring is ongoing. Current interference zones have been found to correlate spatially with metallic density concentrations in the debris field. Areas with high ferrous content demonstrate greater field coherency and increased pulse amplitude. Drone Relay R6 Theta reported a complete system reset during a 4.6-minute null current pass. Logs indicate that processor cascade protections were not triggered, and all functions resumed after reinitialization. Firmware review is in progress. Electrical potential tests across composite alloy plates retrieved from Zone 3 indicate transient conductivity inversion. Measured reversals lasted under 0.03 seconds and did not propagate beyond local plate boundaries. Magnetic flux anchors installed on mooring rig Zeta 19 experienced decreased field retention across their lateral stabilizers. The drop averaged 0.6% during each pulse event. Retention returned to 100% within 15 seconds. Multi-spectrum scans show low-yield photonic scatter across interference boundaries. The glow is non-visible and does not register outside UVB range. Photonic persistence has a decay half-life of 3.8 seconds. The anomaly's position relative to the galactic equatorial shear has been stable for 47 observation hours. Drift models predict zone migration of less than 0.03 degrees per cycle. No gravitational displacement has been recorded across large mass debris clusters. Vibration monitors on static wreckage frames indicate below-threshold amplitude oscillation during peak interference conditions. Comms relay verification checks are scheduled every 2.25 hours. Any rise in jitter or unexplained latency spikes are to be reported via encoded burst protocol using directive gamma frequency 6. End of extended monitoring log. Telemetry from static anchor node V delta shows spike indexing along its power distribution manifold at regular null current intervals. The magnitude of induced signal loss has not exceeded the 9% buffer margin. Orbital pathing of autonomous cargo sleds near Sector 7A has been altered slightly to compensate for directional drift attributed to pulse band activity. Updated trajectory models have been uploaded to all beacon-linked systems. Temporary saturation of shield capacitors has been reported in 2 outlying Scout platforms. Discharge duration averaged 1.3 seconds. No system degradation was logged. Passive acoustic sensors deployed by drone group AE92 captured frequency dampening along structural harmonics between 4 to 6 kHz. The attenuation appears periodic and consistent with field exposure. Micrometeorological probes have not recorded pressure variance. Airless void remains within standard ambient null levels. Active monitoring rigs along the forward boundary have issued an adjustment to scan intervals, now set to 6 seconds per sweep. Drift compression models suggest slightly increased velocity in the northbound fragment belt. Calibration requests issued to control cores of all unmanned survey vehicles currently deployed across the field. Alignment updates are scheduled automatically via satellite node C23. Total energy variance attributed to null current interference across a 24-hour period remains within 1.1% of long-term projection. Concluding null current forecast transmission. Structural field harmonics recorded by Station Outlink 91 show repeating waveform interference along telemetry deck baseplates. Peak vibration cycles occur every 19.7 seconds and propagate across all mounted sensor arrays. Power storage units aboard the Kepler relay demonstrated a slight voltage phase shift during extended presence in the anomaly corridor. Readings stabilized within normal tolerance after 27 minutes. Electrostatic discharge traces measured near probe VEX-03 antenna during direct passage through the zone did not exceed discharge norms. However, residual charge was retained 2.5 minutes longer than baseline averages. Updated maps of vector field stability gradients are being generated in real time using remote pathfinding markers seeded by Surveyor Unit 12B. Full distribution available upon query via Command Uplink Channel Theta 6. Predictive modeling of null current migration paths indicates stable lateral propagation within the Polaris field for at least the next 17 cycles. Deviation likelihood is below 2.3% under current conditions. End of update. Cloud analysis from passive reflectors indicates a sustained presence of field-neutral zones forming between null current pulses. These zones remain electromagnetically inactive and appear to resist further fluctuation propagation. All monitoring systems at Apex Fold and Sentry Grid 5B remain online with no recorded hardware faults. Cycle synchronization confirmed. Forecast conditions show no expansion of interference zone perimeter through next 2 orbital rotations. This concludes the Polaris debris field anomaly report. All systems remain under continuous evaluation. Drift protocols remain active. End of transmission. All monitored phenomena remain within operational parameters. No trajectory adjustments required. Data recording will continue passively. Thank you for remaining within the observation protocol. Signal closing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Safe drift through the silence.